Chapter 167. Everyone was stunned. If the large peacock had been replaced with a female peacock, then there wouldn't have been anything wrong with it. A mother taking a child for a walk in the morning was a very warm and common sight in nature. People who studied peacocks saw it very often. However, a father taking a child for a walk. Oh no, there was an added twist. A father taking a stolen child for a walk. Although it was a pretty picture, everyone wanted to cover their faces, okay? Fortunately, the father took good care of the stolen child. The child was showing signs of obesity, but it was understandable. There was only one child, so who else could feed him? There was only this one child. The male white peacock held him in his hands and sometimes brought him to his feet. He lowered his elegant and slender neck to rub the little peacock's head and small body, as if he wanted to stick to this hard-won child at all times. The child walked on the pebbles for a while and seemed to be tired and unwilling to walk anymore. Of course, how far could someone so fat walk? The white peacock carried him on his back. He was even more proficient at this skill than the female peacock. Too spoiled, too spoiled. Even Professor He, who had always treated the little peacock like a treasure, couldn't help but say, shouldn't someone so fat walk more? Looking at this one and the two that had grown up with their mother, the professors wondered if there wasn't much of a difference between a pair of twins and a pair of twins. How did a pair of newbie fathers become so fat? The mother had laid several nests of eggs before, so the comparison made the mother seem incompetent. Wouldn't it have been better if she had raised the children like the white peacock? Mother Peacock, are you teaching me how to do things? The drone's camera locked onto the two figures to see what they were going to do. At the same time, the team members discussed quietly. Professor Han, what do you think? A young man seemed to want to express something, but wanted to hear Professor Han's opinion. This area is very familiar. Is there a straw hut built by the lake? That was probably a temporary shelter built by the conservation area for wild animals. It was usually only used during the rainy season or when the sun was especially hot. Many animals would come to the lake to drink water and rest in the straw hut. Professor Han was thoughtful. The rainy season is almost here. They probably abandoned the nest to find a new place to live. The nest where the eggs were incubated was not suitable for long-term living. At this point, everyone seemed to understand. It turned out that this responsible father had gone out to find a better living environment for his child. For the convenience of observing them, why don't we make a spacious nest in the forest if they are willing to move in? This was a good suggestion. Professor, he added, we can make a few more to increase the chances of them moving in. Peacocks had a special body shape, so it was difficult for natural nests to accommodate their large bodies. Artificial nests could perfectly solve this problem. At this point in the discussion, a new highlight appeared on the screen, leaving everyone dumbfounded. The white peacock's father had already brought the child to a river with a lot of rocks. When he put down the little peacock and flew to the rocks, people thought he was going to drink water. When he stared at the surface of the water without moving, people thought that he was looking at his own reflection in the water. In the end, all of these guesses were wrong. Not long after, the white peacock caught the first small fish. There was no failure rate. He can catch fish. Peacocks don't have this characteristic. There were many birds that could catch small fish to eat by the water, but peacocks were definitely not one of them. Is it because food is too hard to find, so he came up with something else? Someone guessed, already showing a distressed expression. Life in the wild was still full of difficulties. No, peacocks don't lack food in the wild. They are omnivores and can eat a lot of things, including insects, grains, and fruits. It's impossible that they can't find something to eat. As they chatted, Ao Daisai flew back to the shore and fed Chow Chishi the fish he had cut out like yesterday. Seeing him feed the little peacock like that, the humans went crazy. Small fish in the wild had a lot of bones and could choke on them if they were not careful. Even adult peacocks didn't dare eat carelessly. This white peacock's diet was a bit too messy. However, the little peacock raised its head and gulped down a few mouthfuls. It was obvious that the white peacock had shaved the fish clean. This process was a bit long and required a certain amount of patience. The humans with children at the table put themselves in the shoes of the white peacock and instantly felt that their naughty children were not worthy. He's very patient. Professor Han spread out his hands. He was the one who knew the most about this white peacock, but it still refreshed his knowledge every time. It made him feel that he still knew too little about peacocks. The park immediately organized people to bring the materials to the forest to help the peacock and his son build a nest. They thought that the other party liked to live by the water, so the site should be nearby. There was a lot of rain in the forest. Ao Daisai and Xiao Qishi had not left yet. When he heard the humans' movements, he flew up to the tree vigilantly and hid from the rain with the little baby while watching the humans' actions. He saw that they were building a nest. Ao Daisai squinted his eyes and yawned uninterestedly. With his beautiful appearance, even a yawn revealed a lazy beauty. The little fat peacock squatted on his boyfriend's back and rolled his eyes. Obviously, the human's actions had aroused his interest. Are they building a small house? Ao Daisai. As a human a long time ago, he was looking forward to living in a small house. Yes. However, Ao Daisai did not seem to like it. After the rain stopped, he spread his wings and flew away with him. It was the first time that people had seen a white peacock with such a strong flying ability. When he carried the little baby over the canopy, everyone's hearts tightened. They were afraid that he would be exhausted in the next second. Ah, the white peacock has flown away. Are we going to continue building the nest? It seemed that the white peacock was very stubborn and did not want to accept their kindness. Continue, the professor said. Even if they did not want to live there now, they might live there in the future. Also, the other animals in the reserve were convenient for them. Building a nest was very simple. It was done with a few planks and did not require much money. There were many rivers in Yunnan that perfectly provided water for the wild animals. Birds and animals lived along the waterways. Whenever a documentary about the local customs of Yunnan was filmed, it was necessary to collect materials from this vibrant land. The animals and plants showed their wild and natural beauty in the camera. In the late spring, there were flowers everywhere. It was brilliant and beautiful. In the summer, there were fruits everywhere and the spring water was clear. This was the wilderness that Ao Daisai and Xiao Qishi were used to. There was nothing new about it. However, it was the first time that they had seen the forest and the river from the sky. Ao Daisai liked the feeling of flying freely. Flying in the air made him feel relaxed and happy. Everything was in his hands. In order to let Yolashanda rest early, Ao Daisai quickly found a place to rest. It was an abandoned natural karst cave scenic spot. There was a stream in front and a terrace above. The entrance of the karst cave was blocked by a man-made stone wall. The purpose was to prevent explorers from taking risks. However, the spacious terrace alone was enough to build a nest. The dome above was enough to shelter them from the wind and rain. Yolashanda's legs turned to jelly. He walked 2 steps and found some words carved on a rock wall. Look at the age. No one had set foot here for at least a few decades. This would be the place where he and Ao Daisai would live. There were many abandoned natural cave scenic spots like this in Yungue Chuan. There were 2 reasons why these scenic spots were abandoned. One was that accidents happened inside because it was too dangerous. The other was that the business was not doing well. The population was decreasing year by year. Compared to the 5 billion people in the heyday, there were only 1 billion people now. Naturally, they could not support the turnover of these small scenic spots. The staff found that they had gone to the abandoned XX Palace scenic spot through the drone camera. They were immediately impressed by the white peacock's ability to choose a location. It could shelter them from the wind and rain, but ordinary birds and animals would not choose it. Ao Daisai felt that it was a good place. The surroundings were a little messy, but it could be cleaned up. He told the little bear not to run around. There were a lot of potholes and holes here. If he accidentally fell in, he would be gone. Got it. Xiao Qishi looked up at the inscriptions on the tablet with his little wings. He walked around with his little paws and was in danger of falling. While Ao Daisai was cleaning up the debris around, Xiao Qishi walked to the stone wall. The gap between the stones was big enough for him to stick his head in. What are you doing? Ao Daisai knew Yolashanda's character. He had to keep an eye on him while he worked. When the scene was too quiet, He knew that something must have happened. Xiao Qishi heard him and immediately pulled his head out of the gap. However, he was in too much of a hurry and hit his head. Wah wah wah. Ao Daisai was speechless. Ao Daisai left his half-finished work and walked over. He used his wings to chase the baby to a safe place. Stay here. In the end, he was still worried. He grabbed some stones and formed a circle around the baby. Xiao Qishi was speechless. What was this guy doing? A small circle. There was no need for that. Xiao Qishi felt that his intelligence was being questioned. Ao Daisai, please make this circle bigger. Xiao Qishi put his little wings on the circle and said the most cowardly words in his toughest manner. Ao Daisai ignored him and patted his head. Then, he turned around and continued to work with his gorgeous whitetail feathers. Damn! Xiao Qishi, who was imprisoned in the circle, did not know if it was his illusion. He felt that Ao Daisai was becoming more and more. How should he put it? A monster. Woo 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 woo. The little fat bird lay in the circle obediently. There was nothing to do. Soon he was so bored that he scratched his feet. He turned his head and looked at the stone wall. When he stuck his head in, he saw that there was light inside. At the same time, there was a cool air flowing out. In summer, it would be a natural air conditioner. Ao Daisai. Xiao Qishi got up and scratched the stone with his claws. He made crazy sounds. Can I come out? I'll help you. It's so boring to stay here alone. Sob, sob, sob. I want to be with you. The busy white figure did not respond. Xiao Qishi pretended to be pitiful and confessed. Then he put his claws on the wall and eagerly said, I'm coming down. No matter how high this wall is, it can't stop my love for you. My love for you. He not only said that, but he also sang. This was ridiculous. Aya! Xiao Qishi cried out softly. In the end, he climbed out of the wall and fell on his butt. Fortunately, he was fluffy now, so the fall was quite comfortable. Of course, he did not dare to go to such a messy place again. A man was a man of his words. Ao Daisai, I'm coming. I'll help you. Xiao Qishi ran over with his two claws, a dry grass in his mouth. No, this was not grass. This was building material. It could be used to build a warm home for them. Ao Daisai had already cleared out a suitable place to build a nest. He had also collected some dry grass at his feet. He smiled as he watched the baby throw the grass up. All right then. If you work hard, I won't encircle you. Ao Daisai promised. It was getting late, and he did not have much time to chat with Yolashanda. It was fine as long as the other party was not mischievous. Okay, Xiao Qishi agreed readily. He followed Ao Daisai. At first, he worked diligently, taking small steps to carry the building materials that could be used to build the nest. Ao Daisai was in a good mood. He felt that he had been pleased by his partner, even though he did not need the other party's help. He could just grab a handful of the dry grass. In order to support the weight of the peacock, the nest had to be supported by some slender branches. He was in charge of carrying this kind of material. As Ao Daisai moved, he realized that the small figure beside him had not been seen for a long time. He held the branch in his mouth and looked around. Suddenly, he found a little fatty with his two claws facing the sky in a pile of grass at the entrance of the cave. It turned out that Xiao Qishi was tired from walking and had hidden himself to sleep. When night fell, the sky was filled with colorful clouds. They shone on Ao Daisai's snow-white feathers like an oil painting. He put aside the progress of building the nest and found something to eat nearby. Yolashanda, wake up. A pleasant voice sounded in Xiao Qishi's dream. Who was this handsome guy? His voice was so pleasant. Then his stomach was rubbed a few more times. This was the last place where the feathers grew, so it was very sensitive. Xiao Qishi woke up with a start. When he saw Ao Daisai's gorgeous figure, he suddenly felt guilty. It's already dark. I'm sorry, I accidentally fell asleep while walking. It's okay. Ao Daisai looked at him as if he did not mind at all. Then he showed him the food in his claws. Can't you just continue working after eating? Xiao Qishi froze. Ao Daisai found it funny. He fed the food to the other party's mouth and said gently, I'm joking. Eat your fill and continue sleeping. After feeding Yolashanda, he threw himself into the nest building work. Although he did not inherit the peacock's nest building skills, This kind of thing did not seem to be a problem for Ao Daisai. He had finished the nest before midnight. When he moved the sleeping Ilashanda, the other party groaned and waved his claws. Ao Daisai coaxed, "It's me. Don't be afraid. Be good." It was the first time that he spent the night in this unfamiliar territory. Obviously, he needed to be more vigilant. Ao Daisai only fell asleep when it was close to dawn. In the morning, the little fat sparrow crawled out from under the other party's tight wings with difficulty. Halfway, he poked his head out and saw the beautiful sunrise. At the same time, he saw the drones in the sky nearby. "Ao Daisai, they're drones filming us." Xiao Qishi whispered. "It's okay." Ao Daisai picked him up and hugged him. His voice was lazy and tired. "Let me sleep for a while. When I wake up, I'll get you something to eat. Be good." The author has something to say. Today is Xiao Xiao in the circle. Chapter 168. Xiao Qishi had never come into contact with humans ever since he came out of his shell. He was completely clueless about the current society. He thought that this was still the era that he was familiar with. The drones were made even smaller, and it was easy to see them. However, Xiao Qishi was also very small now, so he felt that there was no difference. He just spontaneously had a feeling that humans really liked to observe the lives of animals, as always. Xiao Qishi was very embarrassed. He was sorry that he had contributed another piece of strange data to the country. Perhaps his and Ao Daisai's abnormal behavior was the ultimate reason why they had been tracked and studied. Looking at the words T on the cave wall, Xiao Qishi knew that he was still in his motherland. That was great. The soil, water, and environment of his motherland were more comfortable and livable. When Ao Daisai woke up, he stretched his stiff limbs. His claws and wings were also considered limbs. And his neck. He even shook his head gently before he was completely awake. He found that Xiao Qishi had been obedient and was now curled up under his wings. He smiled. "Are you hungry?" Xiao Qishi opened his eyes and quickly shook his head. In fact, he had just gone back to sleep. "I'll go find you something to eat first." Ao Daisai chose to ignore his answer. Ao Daisai, which province are we in now? Xiao Qishi had a better understanding of China's territory. Combined with Peacock, he could almost guess. "Is it Yunnan?" "Yes." Ao Daisai nodded. "Ah, then can we still see our former comrades?" Xiao Qishi had been thinking about this for a long time, but he was still young at that time. Of course, he was still very young now. "No, it's 2065 now." Ao Daisai calmly broke Yulashanda's fantasy and analyzed in a low voice. "When we left, it was 2021. At that time, the oldest relatives were in their early 60s, and the youngest was in their early 50s. Unless they could live to the age of 90. Even then, they would not have the opportunity to meet." "What?" Xiao Qishi was shocked. She did not expect it to be the year 2065. She felt a sense of loss. This meant that everyone was very old. However, she quickly became optimistic again. With the development of society, the lifespan of humans is getting longer and longer. It shouldn't be difficult to live to 90 years old, right? Ao Daisai, that's true, but you can't be sure that we're still in the original world. As he spoke, he flew down the cliff and glided towards the shore. At the same time, he warned the baby, "Don't run around outside the nest. You can't be sure that we are still in our original world." This sentence stunned Xiao Qishi for a moment, and it took her a while to come back to her senses. Yes, Ao Daisai's words made sense. They had been reborn into other species again and again, and the timeline did not always move forward. Sometimes it even moved backward. Therefore, it was more reliable to be reborn in a parallel world. This was something that could be discovered if one calmed down and thought about it. What surprised Xiao Qishi was that the amount of knowledge stored in Ao Daisai's mind had reached an immeasurable level. Sometimes the vocabulary and amazing logic that popped out often made him, a top student of the past, feel ashamed. As the saying went, the brain would rust if it was not used. Xiao Qishi did not like to use his brain when the living environment was not bad. He preferred to live a carefree life like an animal. only thinking about eating, drinking, and sleeping. It might make people think that he was useless, but he was already an animal. What was the point of being useless? Wouldn't that be causing trouble for himself? Xiao Qixi was a very open-minded and optimistic person. He did not show any dissatisfaction with being reborn as a cub again. The only dissatisfaction was that he had endless snacks and snacks every day. Xiao Qixi sat and looked down at her two-layered belly, afraid that it would develop into a three-layered belly in a short period of time. The first step to rejecting the three-layered belly was to walk out of the comfort zone and increase the amount of exercise. Therefore, Xiao Qixi turned over. On the surveillance screen connected to the drone, countless pairs of eyes stared at the little peacock as it turned over. They smiled and recorded the data. The high-tech drone could now measure the surface data of the object being photographed. Unfortunately, it could not measure the weight. However, everyone felt that there was no need to worry about the little peacock's weight. It would not fail to meet the standard, it would only exceed it. The drone sneaked closer when the white peacock was not around. However, a huge close-up appeared on the screen. Professor Han, who was also analyzing the data, paused because he found a problem. If it was not an illusion, he found that the little peacock and the white peacock that raised it had something in common that other peacocks did not have. Their eyes were very bright, not at all superficial and ignorant. Instead, they looked very steady and determined. The adult peacock was even sharper, comparable to the overlord of the sky, the eagle. This was very unreasonable. The white peacock was not even considered a bird of prey. Regardless, this was an interesting discovery. It reminded people of the proverb, "Dragons give birth to dragons, and phoenixes give birth to phoenixes." The little peacock was raised by the white peacock. Perhaps this was why it was more like a father. As for the biological father, his mission was completed at the moment of mating. After that, he would not have any interaction with the little peacock. "It's so cute." The staff could not help but praise. Cute things always made people happy from the bottom of their hearts. Just as everyone was enjoying the show, a black figure appeared in the blue sky. As it slowly approached, people realized that it was an eagle. This was a bad sign. The eagle was the overlord of the sky. It usually fed on the young of other birds. Sometimes, it would also catch adult birds. "Oh no, it's the eagle." The staff member who was laughing earlier said anxiously, "What should we do? Professors, should we find a way to lure the eagle away?" The eagle's posture showed that it was out to look for food. It had a pair of very good eyesight. Perhaps it had already seen the little peacock. "Try to lure it away." The professors immediately ordered. Therefore, the staff controlled the drone to interfere with the eagle's approach. For rare and endangered animals, this was possible. However, it was not guaranteed to succeed. The eagle had indeed discovered the little peacock's existence. Its target was very clear. Even if the drone interfered, it did not pay attention. Xiao Qixi sensitive hearing quickly noticed the change in the sky. He focused his eyes and saw that it was an eagle. His instincts made his hair stand on end. No way, this eagle was not going to eat him, right? In the next second, Xiao Qixi's clumsy and chubby figure immediately climbed to the edge of the nest. With a flip, he landed on the ground. Then he ran to the front of the stone wall, found a relatively large gap, and crawled in. To see what was happening outside, he even poked his head out. Then he saw the eagle stop by his nest. The eagle's 5 senses were very sharp. Otherwise, it would not have been able to sense the presence of food in the air. It locked onto Xiao Qixi's position through the movement. "He's here! He's here! He's here!" He was wearing a pair of white long johns as he walked over stupidly. Xiao Qixi, who was hiding in the gap, was not afraid. He calmly retracted his head and walked a little further in. There was still a gap in the corner. However, if he wanted to fit his entire body in, he would need to shrink his stomach a little. Just as he was thinking, an eagle's claw suddenly reached in. Unfortunately, its legs were not long enough. It stretched to its limit and did not catch the prey inside. The eagle was clearly troubled, then stuck its head in. Xiao Qixi laughed. If its legs were not long enough, would its neck be long enough? Sahohu! He was laughing at the eagle, but there was a group of people who were worried about him. They were on the verge of a mental breakdown. For a moment, they did not know whether to blame the eagle or the incompetent white peacock. It was very dangerous to leave a cub in the nest, okay? Professor Han rubbed his forehead. Perhaps at this moment, he was starting to regret not bringing the little peacock back earlier. Was there still a chance to regret now? Thinking that the cute little peacock was about to become the eagle's lunch, everyone's faces were filled with pain. But in fact, the second the eagle landed in the nest, Ao Daisai, who was searching for food nearby, had already sensed danger. He immediately tried his best to return to the nest. The drone captured the image of his rapid return. The speed was unbelievable. Was this really the speed of a peacock? "He's back!" everyone exclaimed. This seemed to be a turning point. It gave people a little bit of hope. However, his return did not seem to be of much use. The white peacock's combat ability was not on the same level as the eagle's. The eagle even dared to hunt foxes, while the peacock usually only ate insects. It did not even catch mice. Even if a fierce battle broke out between them, the eagle would win in the end. After Ao Daisai returned to the nest, he did not land. He flew directly towards the eagle that was attacking Xiao Qixi. At the same time, a series of rough sounds came from his throat. Like every female bird protecting their young, he was filled with the fury of battle. The ear-piercing sound was heard. People had to cover their ears. This white peacock was so fierce. The eagle immediately pulled its head out and tried to turn around to face the mother of its young. Unfortunately, it was one step too late. Ao Daisai's sharp claws were already on its back. The pain of having its hair and flesh pulled up agitated the eagle so much that it let out an ear-piercing cry. At this point, the two big birds officially started fighting. Their sharp claws and beaks were their weapons of war. In terms of flying skills, the eagle was definitely the best. However, in terms of fighting skills, Ao Daisai was 10,000 times better than him. An intense fight broke out in the cave. The snow-white figure clawed and pecked at the gray figure. Both of them flapped their wings, causing dust and grass to fly everywhere. The drone carefully peeked in and saw a scene that made their jaws drop in shock. The one who had the upper hand was the white peacock's father. Even though the white peacock was dragging along a cumbersome tail feather, he was still agile. He took advantage of the terrain and seemed to intentionally seal the eagle in a blind spot. He did not allow the eagle to change its direction to attack him. This way, he could reduce the risk of being dragged down by the tail feather. Moreover, every time he attacked, he purposely chose the weakest spot, the neck, the eyes. Once his claws grabbed the other party's hair, he would tear it apart forcefully. Humans could feel the pain just by looking at it. This fight was too skillful. Soon, a piece of the eagle's neck was torn off. The bloody scene was shocking. If this continued, the eagle would die, right? Was the white peacock going to kill the eagle? From the perspective of humans, the workers naturally did not wish for the white peacock to kill the eagle, but the eagle had a strong memory and was also very vengeful. If he was still alive, he would definitely seek revenge. If he was not killed, the white peacock and his son would not be able to sleep peacefully in the future. How the situation would develop was not something they could decide. It was up to the white peacock himself. It could only be said that humans had too many worries. As a beast, Ao Daisai did not consider so much. The moment this eagle saw his little cutie as prey, he deserved to die. After killing the eagle, Ao Daisai's claws were covered in blood. The snow-white feathers on his body were also stained with blood. Through the screen, the people saw him standing quietly beside the eagle's corpse. He did not even dare to breathe loudly. Obviously, he had not recovered from the intense battle just now. It could only be said that this white peacock was really fierce. Professor Han smiled bitterly and wiped away cold sweat for himself. He was glad that he did not touch the little peacock back then. The eagle had died too tragically. It was quiet outside. It seemed that the fight had stopped. Xiao Qixi took a deep breath and released herself from the card slot. Ao Daisai? Yes, come out. Ao Daisai's voice was normal. He did not ask Yolashanda if she was okay, just like how Yolashanda did not ask him if he was okay. This was because they both believed in each other's strength. A small eagle was nothing to be afraid of. Xiao Qixi walked out happily. She walked around the bloodstains on the ground and leaned on Ao Daisai's leg. Her intention to act spoiled was obvious. When the people saw this cute little figure running out, their nervousness and fear were immediately relieved. He was fine. That was great. What a smart little guy. He actually knew how to hide from the eagle's hunt by hiding in the cracks. Did I scare you just now? Ao Daisai said apologetically. It used its wings to comfort him. It's okay. Xiao Qishi would not say that he had laughed at the eagle just now. He looked up at Ao Daisai's bloody feathers and was certain. This blood is the eagle's? Yes. Ao Daisai said, You stay here. I'll throw his body out. Staying here would attract wild beasts. The eagle was still quite heavy. Even Ao Daisai seemed to struggle to drag him up. Seeing this situation, Xiao Qishi hoped that he could grow up quickly so that he could help Ao Daisai. He walked to the entrance of the cave and watched the other party destroy the corpse. Wait a little longer. I still need to take a shower. Ao Daisai's figure gradually flew away. Xiao Qishi thought to himself, not only do you need to take a shower, you also need to find food again. He was not hungry when he had just woken up. Now that he had experienced a scare, his stomach was rumbling. After waiting for a long time, Ao Daisai came back. Xiao Qishi could not help but ask him, why didn't we just eat the eagle's meat? It was already dead. Wouldn't it be a waste to throw it away? Ao Daisai brought back food that was easier to digest. He even brought back a bunch of red fruits. He had just taken a shower, and his feathers were still wet. He tilted his head and said, The eagle's meat is very dry. You'll have a stomachache if you eat it. Xiao Qishi, did you secretly eat it just now? Ao Daisai tidied his feathers. No, I ate it before. Oh, when exactly did Ao Daisai eat the eagle? Xiao Qishi thought hard but could not recall this memory. Could it be when he went missing for half a month in his previous life? He actually caught an eagle and ate it. As expected of Ao Daisai, he was wild. The eagle, what the hell in the day? Chapter 169. Ever since that day, the nest had not been attacked by any other animals. Birds of prey, snakes, and other dangerous animals seemed to have disappeared overnight. Xiao Qishi could not help but praise these animals for their keen senses. It was right not to appear. Otherwise, Ao Daisai would have a few more innocent souls under its claws. After a peaceful first half-month, the spacious platform was cleaned more and more neatly. This gradually revealed Ao Daisai's love of cleanliness as usual, and even a little bit of mysophobia and obsessive-compulsive disorder. No weeds were allowed to grow on the cave walls. No matter how tall they were pulled out because the weeds in the cave would attract mosquitoes. These weeds bloomed and bore fruit. The seeds that fell to the ground would grow into a pile in the next year. All the fine stones were also taken out and piled into piles of different heights. It looked very artistic. Lying in the nest and watching Ao Daisai wander around the cave, its body graceful and casual, Xiao Qishi could not help but imagine that if Ao Daisai was a human, it would be a great talent. Not to mention the top in the country, it would probably conquer the top in the world. These days, the routine of life was leisurely. Ao Daisai would fly out about 3 times a day to look for food. The rest of the time, it would stay in the cave, either to tidy up the cave or to accompany Xiao Qishi for a while. Xiao Qishi's hair was no longer soft. Harder feathers had finally grown on the top of its head and wings, looking mottled and ugly. When he was cleaning his armpit, he saw those gray feathers. Instantly, he felt uncomfortable. What was going on? After the yellow fetus hair was shed, shouldn't it be greeted with white hair that was fluttering in the wind? Xiao Qishi suddenly had an ominous premonition, and Ao Daisai quickly noticed that he had a lot on his mind. The other party did not know why the baby was unhappy, but it hoped that he would be happy. Now that they had become 2 birds, the only way to express intimacy was to hug. They could not even lick Ao Daisai's favorite feather. He hugged her plump body into his wings. On a slightly cold night, her chest that was covered with fine feathers felt very comfortable to the touch. It was warm when he leaned against her. Xiao Qishi rolled her eyes and said, Ao Daisai, I want to take a bath. Will you take me to the river tomorrow? When he reached the river, he could look at himself in the mirror and judge what he was. He seriously suspected that Ao Daisai was lying. Maybe he wasn't a peacock, but an egg that Ao Daisai randomly picked up by the roadside. Ao Daisai was hesitant at first. She seemed reluctant to take him to the river for a bath. You're not dirty, but I want to wash. Xiao Qixi insisted. In the end, afraid that the other party would not agree, she even used the other party's favorite trick. Her little belly pressed against the other party's neck and said, "Okay." The baby's soft body pushed Oda's face to the side and even blocked his breathing hole. Oda struggled to get out and took a deep breath. Indeed, he could not say no to Zhang Hong. He was a sucker for Zhang Hong. "Okay, I can take you. But don't cry when you see it," he added in his heart. The next morning, Ao Daisai carried Xiao Qixi out of the cave early in the morning, but he did not stop by the nearest stream. Since it was rare for him to come out, he thought that Yulashanda would be happier to go to a beautiful place. Flying upstream along the river, they soon saw a waterfall. There were many such sceneries in Yunnan. Just a casual slap of the waterfall would cause people to yearn for it. Although Xiao Qixi did not come to enjoy the beautiful scenery today, the small waterfall still made him feel happy. Even when he saw his ugly reflection in the water, he only felt a little sad. "Tell me honestly, what am I?" Xiao Qixi prayed in her heart, as long as she was not a crow. After being exposed, he was glad that Yulashanda's ability to accept things was good. She did not seem very sad. Ao Daisai boldly said, "You're also a peacock, but not white. Blue?" Xiao Qixi immediately thought of this. "No, it's green." Ao Daisai flapped her wings a little apologetically. If only she had explained it in time. She was a green peacock? Xiao Qixi knew this one. It was a national first-class protected animal. An adult was also very beautiful. He announced that he was fine. Now was the awkward period of being ugly. In a year or two, she would be beautiful. Of course, Xiao Qixi still regretted that he did not become a white peacock. He glanced next door. The white peacock was really beautiful. Ao Daisai did not see Yulashanda's envious gaze. He found it hard to understand. What was so envious about such a flashy appearance? If possible, the eagle that he had killed before might be more suitable for his reincarnation. Feeling that the little cutie was still sad, Ao Daisai, who was standing on a rock by the water, thought for a moment. Suddenly, it spread its wings and shook its tail. The big tail that was usually closed together was slowly opening. It was a sign that the tail was about to open. Xiao Qixi was taken aback. Her entire body went into a daze. She felt that it was very sudden. After about 4 or 5 seconds, the beautiful white peacock completely opened its tail. The distinct long tail feathers spread out into a big fan, showing off under the morning light. No matter if it was him or his reflection in the water, they were all too beautiful. Xiao Qixi could not take her eyes off him. She felt so jealous. This was the first time Ao Daisai did this. He did not think that he looked good, but he thought that Yulashanda would definitely like it. Perhaps this could make her happy. Now, he was a heartless waiter. He only did this to make his child happy. It seemed that he did not know that there was another meaning to it besides looking good. He did not know, but Xiao Qixi knew. On one hand, she felt that the white peacock was too beautiful. On the other hand, she felt that this fellow was too shameless. How old was she? Bah, shameless. Ao Daisai, I'm only a month old. Xiao Qixi reminded. Ao Daisai did not understand. He thought that the other party was complaining that time was passing too slowly and wanted to grow beautiful feathers quickly. It's okay, you will grow up soon. Xiao Qixi, it turned out that it was not an illusion. It was real. Recently, the atmosphere in the Peacock Garden had been very good. People had walked out of the gloomy atmosphere of the past 6 months. Back then, the little peacocks had all died young. They focused on raising the 4 little peacocks that had survived this spring. This was a very significant number. Including the one that was wandering outside, there were 5 peacocks. They had all safely grown to a month old. Generally, once they grew strong feathers, the chances of them dying young were not high, unless they fell sick. Peacocks that lived in groups were more likely to fall sick. There was a risk that they would infect each other. According to the recently collected data, the little peacock that was wandering outside was healthier and stronger than the peacocks in the garden. While everyone was happy, they could not help but feel a little complicated. Why the white peacock could raise the little peacocks so well had become Professor Hahn's main research direction. However, there was no reliable progress so far. They were very anxious. After the rainy season, they would enter the breeding season in the second half of the year. From September onwards, female peacocks would start laying eggs. If there were 5 more little peacocks in the second half of the year, the number of green peacocks would increase. What was the reason for the high survival rate in the first half of the year? If they did not figure this out, they would not be able to sleep well. In short, they did not want to see the peacock eggs in the second half of the year being wiped out. Some people even suggested that they should send another egg to the white peacock's nest in the second half of the year. Or 2 would be fine. What if both of them survived? Professor Hahn, did they not think that this was very risky? Sending an egg without figuring out the reason? What if the white peacock did not like other people's eggs and only liked the ones that it stole? Wasn't it well known in the garden that the peacock had a strong personality? The ultimate secret to mastering the survival rate could be put aside for the time being. In short, 5 peacocks survived in the first half of the year. They could use this result to ask for more funding. The higher-ups came to inspect. Didn't you say there were 5? Why are there only 4? Professor Hahn, who was responsible for the facade, said without changing his expression, "There's another one outside." The leader, his face said, "You're lying to me?" Later, he watched the video recording and finally believed that there was a 5th little peacock. He heard that it was an egg that was wandering outside. In order to observe this abnormal phenomenon, the garden decided to leave the egg in the white peacock's nest. That was really strange. Since the results were good, the responsibility was not pursued. However, the leader asked intentionally or unintentionally, "Why are the peacocks in other people's nests so fat? Why are the peacocks in your garden so thin?" Professor Hahn, go and ask the white peacocks. Why are you asking me? The peacocks were not displayed in the first half of the year. Caring people who paid attention to the survival of the green peacocks had guessed the situation and did not have the heart to open this scar. So what if the garden had a definite answer? It would only make them sad. It was better to wait patiently for news. However, half a year had passed. Was there really no good news? The garden's official account received some intentional or unintentional inquiries every day. How is the green peacock breeding? Are there any peacocks born this year? Spring is over. When can we see the peacocks? There were no births in the second half of last year. Are there any this spring as well? It's beautiful, but it's too quiet. There are only these few coming and going. They're all adults. When will there be a baby? From these comments, it could be seen that many people were paying attention. Many people were waiting. Their wait was not in vain. One morning in early June, the garden released a piece of good news. A total of 5 peacocks were born this spring. They also released a video clip of the peacocks hatching until they were 1 month old. People watched with relish and joy. However, soon, someone noticed a problem. There are only 4 in the video. Where's the other one? Please don't let the staff make a mistake. Everyone would be heartbroken. However, the staff would not make such a low-level mistake. Before the video of the white peacock raising the baby was released, the staff asked Professor Hahn, "Do you really want to release it? This might subvert everyone's understanding." Professor Hahn nodded. "Release it." The staff had already edited the video of the white peacock raising the baby. The staff did not know how many times they had watched it. After it was released, everyone waited to see the comments. Sure enough, it quickly caused an uproar. The number of views and popularity of the video between the father and son was much higher than the video of the 4 peacocks. Was it because the white peacock was beautiful? No, no matter how beautiful the white peacock was, it was not rare. There were many surviving white peacocks. What was rare was that a male, was actually raising a baby. The netizens were confused. The comments were all a series of question marks. If I didn't look at the official account above my head, I would have thought that it was a parody video. This is reasonable. I suspect that the officials made this video to attract attention. No need, no need. A male white peacock raising a green peacock. Even if you think with your toes, you know that it's impossible. This script is too low level. Aren't 4 peacocks very eye-catching? However, the 5th peacock is very fat. Haha. Everyone knew that there would be a large number of such questioning comments, so they all used their work accounts to explain. This is real. There is no editing. There is no deception. Official accounts were not allowed to publish false information. This was a fact that everyone knew. However, it was too unbelievable. They just said a few words. After saying that, they immediately went back to admire the cute appearance of the fat peacock. If it was real, it would be too cute. A little peacock, raised by a father who had no blood relations. There were too many important points that they did not know where to start. First, even female peacocks found it difficult to raise their babies, but a male white peacock did it. How much did he like raising children? The netizens face-bombed. Second, this male white peacock looked cool and handsome, but his behavior, it could only be described as a male mother. He was very good to the little peacock. There was also the scene of the white peacock fighting with the eagle. Although it was only a flash, it was enough to show the fierceness of the white peacock. But what was the final result? They only knew that the little peacock was not injured. Otherwise, there would not be a follow-up video. Official father. I want to see the full video of the white peacock and eagle fight. Can you post it? Want to see +1? Many people left comments saying that they wanted to see it. The staff was overwhelmed by such private messages and had to ask Professor Han. Professor Han thought for a while and rejected. The video is too bloody. It is not suitable to be shown in public. The staff received the message and relayed it to everyone. Sorry, everyone. Because the battle video is too bloody, it is not suitable to be shown in public. Therefore, this video will not be shown. It was too bloody and fishy. Netizens. Okay, we understand even if you don't show the video. Understood, understood. We will fill in the gaps ourselves. Last question. Were there any casualties? The staff thought for a while. Yes, unfortunately. The author has something to say. Eagle has officially finished filming. How should I put it? I saw some of my friends saying that the plot is too dull. I have to tell everyone that this unit will always be like this. There will not be any conflicting plots. Chapter 170. Only death was worthy of such a sorrowful tone. The fact that the white peacock was still alive and kicking meant that the eagle was gone. For a moment, people began to doubt themselves. Was it because they had been too rigid about peacocks, or was it because the eagle was not up to the task? But no matter what, the atmosphere was peaceful. Everyone was just mourning the passing of the eagle. After all, the eagle was also a national protected animal. Sorry to the eagle, but there was no way for humans to resolve the conflict between national protected animals. Most of the humans could only watch the show and cheer. Summer was coming. The highest temperature during the day rose to 30 degrees Celsius. When Xiao Qishi accepted that he was a green peacock, Ao Daisai no longer avoided taking him out for walks by the water. He had grown up and was now as big as 2 adults' fists. He would be fine even if he fell into a pit occasionally. Every morning, the white peacock would walk slowly along the riverbank. Occasionally, he would peck at the small fish and shrimps by the water and turn around to feed them to his cub, who was looking around behind his tail. Xiao Qishi was basically full by the time they walked from the house to the small waterfall. At this time, the sun had already risen to midair. If they continued to stay under the strong ultraviolet rays, they would feel hot. The cub, who was afraid of the heat, took small steps and rushed into the shade of the trees. With the arrival of summer, many wild fruits on the mountain gradually ripened and emitted a fragrant smell. Xiao Qishi's nose was still as sensitive as a dog's in this life. He could smell the fruits from afar. This was too fortunate. After all, the two of them loved to eat fruits since they were polar bears. It was just that they did not have the means to do so at that time. Now that they were in the wild and had a pair of wings, they could fly up to the trees and pick fruits at any time. Seeing the half-red fruits on the tree, Ao Daisai consciously flew up and stood on a branch to pick a fruit to peck and see if it was ripe. The sweet and sour taste spread between the bird's tongue. However, Ao Daisai did not pick the fruit. He flew to a branch further away and found a fruit that was more ripe. He held in his mouth and flew down. The fruit was ripe and would break if thrown down directly. Thank you, Ao Daisai. Xiao Qixi had a small appetite, so she only needed 1/3 of the fruit after the meal. Ao Daisai tilted her head and did not fly up to pick the fruits. Instead, she waited for Yolashanda to finish eating before eating the rest. When it came to food, he still had the mindset of a beast, taking as much as he could eat. After eating a few small fishes and prawns and 1/3 of the wild fruits, the chubby little sparrow almost couldn't walk anymore. Ao Daisai, whose one step was equivalent to more than 10 steps of the little fellow, moved slowly and patiently beside him. Sometimes he even stopped and waited. Time passed very slowly for them. Xiao Qixi raised paw froze in midair because its next step was to step on a wild fruit on the ground. From the looks of it, it had fallen not long ago. Naturally, it would be delicious if it was naturally cooked. It would be a waste to just leave it here. If only they hadn't gone up to pick it just now. Ao Daisai, why don't we bring this fruit back? Xiao Qixi did not have the ability to move the fruit, so she could only ask Ao Daisai for help. Ao Daisai didn't mind eating overnight food when he was a polar bear. However, after a trip to the human world, he obviously had a lot of bad habits now. Under certain circumstances, he would never eat overnight food. What did certain circumstances mean? He glanced sideways at the many wild fruits on the tree. This was a condition. Okay, but we still have to go somewhere else. So how about we leave it here first? Ao Daisai suggested. Xiao Qixi was very happy that he agreed. She quickly nodded. Okay, no rush. The two of them walked around the wild fruit and continued to walk into the depths of the forest. The drone was tired of this scene. This was the same route that the white peacock took every day. They would stay in the forest until almost noon, then return to the nest to rest after eating their fill. It was almost time to go back. Ao Daisai began to announce, "You can stay here for another 10 minutes. Xiao Qixi, Sai, this was the most frightening thing to hear every time they came out for a walk. Like all children, Xiao Qixi, who was now a cub, loved to play outside. Perhaps it was because he had spent enough time in the nest when he was a baby, but now he was very fond of the feeling of walking outside. 10 minutes passed quickly. Now that he was full and done playing, Yolashanda followed Ao Daisai with his head lowered. Suddenly, he stomped his feet anxiously. Ao Daisai, you didn't take the fruit. They were now at the edge of the water, far away from the wild fruit tree. Ao Daisai was stunned for a moment, then gave him a reassuring look and turned to fly to the place where the wild fruit tree grew. What are the details? These are the details. Xiao Qixi thought to himself, but he soon realized that he was the only weak chicken left. If an eagle suddenly appeared, there would be nowhere to hide. Fortunately, Ao Daisai came back very quickly. Come up. He not only had to grab a fruit, but he also had to carry Xiao Qixi on his back. This ability to land on one foot was honestly very cool. Yolashanda began to imagine himself growing up to be like this. Back in the nest, Ao Daisai didn't look like he wanted to take a nap. He put the wild fruit in the nest and accompanied Yolashanda as he took a nap. Good afternoon. This was a habit that Ao Daisai had learned from television. Good afternoon. Xiao Qixi opened his mouth and yawned. His two beady eyes, which had not yet closed, stared at his little friend on the ground. The more he looked, the more he felt that something was wrong. Was a naturally fallen fruit so fresh? This fruit looked like it had just been plucked from the tree. Anyway, it was definitely not the one he saw on the ground. Ao Daisai. Was the fruit we saw eaten by other animals? Ao Daisai was standing in the gap of the stone wall to enjoy the air conditioner. He had just returned from outside and was a little hot. This was also the reason why he didn't enter the nest to accompany Yolashanda for a nap. Suddenly, he heard the little cutie's soft and sleepy voice. He was stunned, and then he felt guilty and distressed. Yes, Ao Daisai decided that he would not tell such white lies in the future. He would tell Yolashanda everything directly. If that's the case, then we won't pick up the fruits that have just fallen, because other animals also want to eat fruits, but they can't fly. Xiao Qishi said in a daze, and then fell into a sweet sleep. Ao Daisai's body temperature returned to normal. He walked over and lowered his head to kiss the cute little baby. Only Yolashanda would leave resources for other animals. She would always do this. Yes, other animals also wanted to eat fruits. Some of them couldn't climb trees, such as wild boars. In this season, wild boars also had a bunch of cubs. Food could be said to be quite scarce, and the wild fruits that fell from every fruit tree became the best snacks for the piglets. The fruit civet also loved to eat fruits. The civet, which was always harmed by the mountain people in the past, had finally recovered to a certain extent. Xiao Qishi could often see them with a fruit in their left hand and another in their right hand. Sometimes they would even bite one in their mouth. Oh, and there were also hedgehogs. They also liked to eat fruits, but they didn't use the spines on their back to carry the fruits. That was a scene that only happened in cartoons. In the past, many animals were food for Xiao Qishi and Ao Daisai. They had no choice but to stand on opposite sides. Now, everyone was a harmless little animal. No one was in the other's food menu. Thus, they had an unprecedented harmonious relationship between neighbors. In the morning, the sun was shining brightly. In the afternoon, it was raining heavily. The human drones quickly withdrew. Before they left, they took a picture of the little fat sparrow playing in the water by the cave. In less than 3 seconds, he was chased away by the white peacock. The 3-month-old little peacock was no longer willing to stay in the nest obediently. At this moment, he was equivalent to a 7 or 8-year-old human being. People didn't like dogs. He was always mischievous. Although the white peacock's father was always by his side, the staff felt sorry for this only child. If he had another sibling, he wouldn't be watched so closely by his father. Xiao Qishi, that's true. You're right. The rain is flying in. Quickly go back to the nest. Ao Daisai used its wings to chase its partner, who hadn't grown up yet. My claws are dirty. I'm not going in. I still need to sleep at night. Xiao Qishi said. Oh, then do you want to go out and take a shower? Ao Daisai looked at the splashing rain on the platform. Can I? Xiao Qishi took it seriously. What do you think? Ao Daisai said in a low voice. Yolashanda immediately became listless. He spread his wings and turned to go back. After drying his claws, he climbed back into the nest dejectedly. But after a while, he climbed out again. I'm going to poop. Birds were straightforward and couldn't control themselves. But they were intelligent creatures. This was something they could still control. There was a corner in the depths of the cave. There was also a semi-open natural cave entrance. Usually, they would poop there. After all, it was ventilated and there wouldn't be any smell. Birds poop very quickly. It was done in a few seconds. However, Ao Daisai waited for a long time and didn't see Yolashanda return. So he slowly walked over and peeked his head out. The yellow and gray fat figure was playing in a pool of water. The fur below the wings was soaked. Didn't you say you're going to poop? Xiao Qishi looked into the eyes of her boyfriend and squeaked. I'm done. In the next second, he was lifted up by Ao Daisai's claws. At this moment, he felt that landing on one foot wasn't cool at all. Damn it. As an adult, Yolashanda was indignant. As an adult, couldn't he find some fun to decorate his boring life? Yes, he couldn't. He was still in danger of falling sick. If he fell sick, he could only ask for help from humans. It seemed that humans were quite fond of green peacocks. If such a big bird was confiscated, who could Ao Daisai cry to? You'll fall sick. Your body is very weak. This was the concept that Ao Daisai had always instilled in Xiao Qishi. Therefore, Xiao Qishi couldn't refute it. Over time, he also felt that it was difficult to feed himself and that his body was very weak. But he didn't know that compared to the little peacocks in the park, he was as strong as a bull. Of course, Xiao Qishi doubted the authenticity of his weak body on a daily basis, especially when he saw his belly the moment he sat down. He felt that he was being PUA. This wasn't Ao Daisai's fault. The weak genes of green peacocks were instilled in him by humans. It was the anxiety of humans that caused him to be anxious. The soaked feathers were quickly dried by his own body temperature. It was like a small stove with its own drying function. Xiao Qishi thought to himself, "How can you say that my body is weak with this heat? There's something wrong with you." After the heavy rain, a neighbor came to live next door. It was a single white-bellied male who had raised himself until he was chubby. Perhaps the heavy rain had washed away his original home, so he had to find a new place to stay. The large male was very brave. When he saw Xiao Qishi and Ao Daisai looking at him, he didn't stop building his nest. A fledgling was not afraid of tigers. Xiao Qishi guessed that this young male was very young. Perhaps he had just been kicked out by his mother and was relying on himself. Fortunately, he met a good neighbor. "Feel free to use the hay here. You don't have to be polite with me," Xiao Qishi thought to himself. Since they were quite far apart, and the large male's nest was built on a tree near the entrance of the cave, Ao Daisai didn't care. If it was a bird of prey, he would still care. Since he had a large male neighbor, Yilishanda, who liked to wander outside and didn't want to go home, seemed to have found a new hobby. He became a supervisor. Every time he was full, he couldn't wait to come back and watch the large male and female birds build their nest. He even brought some food back for them to put under the tree. The sweet smell of fruit attracted the large male bird. He flew around with the straw in his mouth. When he was tired, he ate the food that Xiao Qishi put under the tree. It wasn't easy for a bird to live outside. After a week, the large male bird got used to having food under his tree. Xiao Qishi was like raising a pet. It was amazing. He didn't think that he would be able to live a life of raising flowers and playing with birds when he was a human. The large male bird didn't eat much. Since the child liked it, Ao Daisai turned a blind eye and didn't care. Sometimes, Yilishanda would secretly give the large male bird food that he couldn't eat. As a result, the large male bird became fatter half a month after he was kicked out. This large male bird had black hair and a white face. He was chubby and very cute. Currently, he was familiar with Xiao Qishi. Sometimes he would fly to Xiao Qishi's side, usually when Xiao Qishi was eating. But he didn't snatch the food. He just waited there with his head tilted. Everyone in the center of the reserve knew that the little peacock had recently made a new friend. It was a large male bird. They had a good relationship. They ate and played together. The photos and videos they took made people melt. When the video was uploaded, it caused a wave of heated discussion among netizens. One of the comments touched Professor Han's heart. "Why do I feel that this little peacock that grew up outside is living a very happy life? It can wander around freely, enjoy the rich natural scenery, and make all kinds of friends. Is this the childhood that a little peacock should have? I feel that his life is so harmonious. Father White Peacock loves him so much. He even knows friends of different species." Previously, some people said that the little peacock was lonely growing up outside. Now that the little peacock had made new friends, no one thought that there was anything wrong with his life outside. This was the life that a bird should have. If Xiao Qishi saw these comments, he would probably refute. Which eye of yours saw that he was lonely? No, he was very happy. Second, although Father White Peacock is very nice, you haven't seen his strict side. Oh no, he's not father. Third, the large male bird is a pet. If they weren't friends, why would he be friends with a guy who didn't even know how to count? Hearing that Xiao Qishi always called the large male bird a pet, Ao Daisai was speechless. He thought that the atmosphere created by them was clearly that they were friends. Obviously, this time, Ao Daisai and humans had the same thoughts. The author has something to say. Today, I won't scold the supporting characters. I'll recommend a super good novel to everyone. It's my good friend. The quality is guaranteed. If you click on it, you won't be at a disadvantage or be fooled. The Law of Attraction by Xiao Meng. Text. During the summer vacation of the second year of junior high school, Father Zhou found a new tutor for his son who had poor grades and angered more than 10 teachers. The top scorer of the college entrance examination tutored you for 2 months before going to Beijing University. Zhou Jinfan was about to cry from anger at the new tutor. But that day, when the tutor came to their house and stood up from the sofa, Zhou Jinfan looked up at him. The new tutor wore glasses and looked very gentle. He had a cold face, but his voice was very charming. Father Zhou found that his son had restrained his temper and was like a good boy in front of the new tutor. On New Year's Day, a crush came true after adding more than 1,000 handsome guys in her circle of friends. She found out that he had added more than 1K handsome guys and deleted them overnight. Chapter 171. The existence of her friends saved Xiao Qishi's warm but somewhat dull life growing up. The only problem was that his friend could fly. When Xiao Qishi wanted to bring him to the top of the tree to play, he could only sigh and promise, "I will come to your house to play after a year." Xiao Qishi's light yellow feather had faded, and short grass-colored feathers covered his entire body. Now, he looked like a gray chicken. Those who were not familiar with the awkward period of peacocks would not be able to tell that this was a beautiful peacock in the future. This was referring to Xiao Qishi. Every day, he would look at himself in the mirror and grumble, "This is too ugly." Even so, Xiao Qishi was still willing to play with him. He cherished this friendship. Sometimes, he even suspected that Xiao Qishi was only playing with him because of the delicious food. That was why he would let his imagination run wild when he was not confident. Ao Daisai did not know what to say. Yulashanda thought he was ugly. First, he was not worried that Xiao Qishi, as his partner, would despise him. Instead, he was worried that Xiao Qishi would despise him. He knew that Xiao Qishi was more important than him. When Xiao Qishi knew about Ao Daisai's unspoken criticism, he explained, "You have seen how ugly I am. If you want to despise me, I would have done a long time ago, right?" That seemed to be the case. Xiao Qishi, in his awkward period, was extremely ugly. Even the netizens, who had 1,000 layers of filters for peacocks, could not go against their conscience and praise him for being cute. It was still okay to look at him alone, as there was no comparison. But if he stood next to Xiao Qishi's father, he was too ugly. Yulashanda, who was still an idol, used all sorts of methods to avoid being photographed by drones. For example, Ao Daisai's huge body and tail. The drones could not capture him, and they thought it was a problem with the drone's operation. They did not expect the little peacock to be smart enough to avoid being photographed. The breeding season for the second half of the year had arrived. Many birds that were not usually seen appeared in the wild. There are also more wild peacocks in the forest. Of course, it was a group of blue peacocks. They were putting on a courtship scene. Assuming they were successful, the female peacock would lay eggs half a month after fertilization. These blue peacocks in the wild did not need people to worry about them. Their reproductive ability was very strong. They were active in courtship, and the survival rate of their young was high. One day, when Ao Daisai was taking Yulashanda for a walk, they suddenly encountered a group of blue peacocks gathered by the water. The males were gorgeous and beautiful, while the females were simple and unadorned. However, the females were treated very well. Just by standing there without moving, they could attract a few male peacocks to fight for her. With Ao Daisai's intelligence, he quickly understood what it meant for a peacock to dance toward another peacock. It should be courtship, a method used by males to attract females. Receiving Ao Daisai's thoughtful gaze, Xiao Qishi felt inexplicably awkward. She thought to herself, "You were the one who wanted to open your tail. I didn't ask to see your beautiful tail." Xiao Qishi originally thought that Ao Daisai would not randomly open the screen again after understanding the meaning of opening the screen. However, he did not expect to see Ao Daisai opening the screen again that evening. Xiao Qishi was speechless. Shameless, doing it knowingly. Ao Daisai, who was doing it knowingly, seemed to be smiling as he looked lazily at his ugly baby. Perhaps he really did not mind. Xiao Qishi suddenly thought of something fun and immediately laughed gloatingly. "Ao Daisai, do you know? Peacocks like you are not popular with peacocks. If you go and court a female, you will definitely be rejected." It was said that in the eyes of peacocks, white peacocks were not good-looking at all. They were not as good-looking as peacocks with colorful feathers. Ao Daisai, who was being told this, laughed and said, "Why are you so happy that I will be rejected by a female?" Xiao Qishi nodded. That's right. Ao Daisai did not say anything else. He would never court a female. During the season of abundant food, female peacocks ate a lot of food. Nuts were the main source of food, and fruits were secondary. They fattened themselves up and then laid their second nest of eggs in early autumn. The green peacocks in the garden also laid eggs, but the number of eggs was 1/3 less than the first half of the year. Their aptitude was not good either. It seemed that after half a year of recuperation, their physical fitness still had not reached its peak. The professors hoped that the female peacocks would give birth to a nest of eggs every year, but the breeding industry had hit a bottleneck. Every decision had to be made carefully. After the eggs were laid, would the white peacocks still come to steal the eggs? The human work group was actually talking about this. Someone said no. It already has a cub by its side. It should be tiring to take care of too. Someone said yes. Stealing is a habit. It will be addictive. Besides, the little peacock is now half a year old. It can almost take care of itself. When it came to taking care of itself, even he was not sure. Taking care of itself? No way. The cub had indeed grown a lot, but it was still a baby who had to open its mouth to eat. After waiting for a long time, the white peacock did not come to steal the eggs. The staff could not tell if they were disappointed or relieved. The only thing they were sure of was that the eggs in the second half of the year were very worrying. After the breeding season, peace was restored in the mountains. The great sparrow in front of the cave was still single. Xiao Qishi sympathized with him and felt that it was quite good. After all, they could not play together now that he had a family. However, the great sparrow had been very busy recently because he had to prepare for winter. His nest had also changed from 1 bedroom and 1 living room in the summer to 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. It was bigger and more spacious. Food was scarce in winter. Most birds had the habit of storing food or directly storing fat. Therefore, birds that people saw in late autumn were especially fat. Peacocks also had to survive winter. They, who had a bigger appetite, also began to store food. The seeds of various plants were rich in nutrients. Small birds picked the small seeds, while large birds picked the nuts on the trees. The squirrels that came and went in the trees directly carried the pine cones back to their nests. Xiao Qishi also liked to eat pine cones. After he had become a bird, the most useful skill he had learned was to peel pine cones. Since he liked to eat pine cones, his food reserve for winter was set to be pine cones. Ao Daisai flew out again and again to pick pine cones from the trees. There were also some on the ground, but he never picked them up. Yulishanda had said that some animals could not climb trees. They should not snatch their food. When he passed by the tree where the woodpecker put food, there were densely packed fruits on it. Ao Daisai turned a blind eye to it. He did not think of stealing the fruits of other small animals' labor. He stood on a branch to look for pine cones. A squirrel poked its head out of its hole. It looked timid and its eyes were full of fear. When it found that it was a gentle bird, it seemed to relax a little and curiosity appeared in its eyes. Ao Daisai never cared about small animals, but Yulishanda would definitely like them. He brought the pine cones back and told the young bird what he had encountered outside. Every time, he could see that the young bird's eyes were bright, as if it had imagined the scene he had seen. He could collect about 5 to 10 pine cones a day. The fresh pine cones exuded a fresh pine scent. They were not completely brown and were a little wet. It happened that the sun was bright during autumn. When Ao Daisai was not around, Xiao Qishi would roll the pine cones one by one under the sun with its fat belly. The platform outside their hole was soon filled with pine cones. There were more and more pine cones every day. Therefore, Xiao Qishi's workload increased. Every day, she would roll out to dry in the morning and roll back in the afternoon before due. Otherwise, she would have wasted the whole day. The pine cones that were rolled back were piled under the wall of the hole. The dry ones were placed in a pile, and the ones that needed to be dried were placed in another pile. However, if winter only had nuts, she would get tired of eating them sooner or later. Xiao Qishi thought about it and felt that drying fish was a good choice. Winter was dry and windy. Small fish the size of a finger would be dried in a day on the stone slab. Of course, Ao Daisai would agree to Little Bear's request. After all, he also liked to eat fish. He just did not think of drying fish. Xiao Qi could also help with fishing. He rolled out the pine cones in the morning and then brought a plastic bag with him. He went out with Ao Daisai. Then, Ao Daisai was in charge of catching fish. He took care of the fish in the plastic bag. They worked together and got a lot of fish in one day. Back in the hole, Xiao Qi patiently placed the small fish one by one. After a night of wind, when he woke up the next morning, the shells of the small fish had dried. Xiao Qi was very diligent. He turned the dried fish over at noon. Not long after, Ao Daisai came back with a jar from outside. It seemed to be a jar used to store egg rolls. It was a little old, but it was clean and looked good. Is it used to store dried fish? Xiao Qi jumped happily. Ao Daisai, you are so smart. As far as he knew, there should be very little garbage in the neighborhood. Ao Daisai might have deliberately flown far away to find this jar. Yes, there was very little garbage in the neighborhood. Fortunately, the water at the door would occasionally send some things. In Ao Daisai and Xiao Qishi's house, they had already collected plastic spoons, snack boxes, and a long-legged doll that was missing an arm. There were also several plastic bags. These were all treasures. They might come in handy at any time. Xiao Qishi's dried fish was very successful. The jar that Ao Daisai picked up was quickly filled. Unfortunately, it was missing a lid. Looking at the distressed Lashanda, Ao Daisai found a thin piece of stone nearby. This was perfect. When the leaves began to wither, the cave was already filled with food. The smell of dried fish and pine cones mixed together. It was the feeling of a harvest. Ao Daisai no longer went out to carry food. There were fewer small fish in the water and fewer insects in the forest. Even the tree that the great tit was resting on began to become bare. Fortunately, there was little rain in winter, and the cave's waterproof function was not bad. When it rained heavily, Xiao Qi would invite the great tit to his house to take shelter. He would also contribute his toys, such as the long-legged doll that was missing an arm. However, the great tit did not seem to be interested. Was the doll not fun? Xiao Qi thought it was quite fun. He would pick up leaves and cover the doll's bare body. However, the great tit did not like it, so he did not force it. I'll treat you to dried fish. Xiao Qi pushed the stone away with his claws, picked up a small dried fish, and gently closed the lid. Ao Daisai was resting. If they quarreled with Ao Daisai, neither of them would have a good time. The great tit liked dried fish very much. If he did not know Lashanda, he would not have been able to taste this delicacy in his life. Who in their right mind would dry fish for a proper animal? The generous Lashanda gave the other half of the fish to him when he returned home. Late winter came. Compared to the barren winter in the north, Yunnan's winter was still lively. Although it was very cold day and night, Ao Daisai and Xiao Qi were still in the nest. Especially Xiao Qi, who felt very cold. Only when he was in Ao Daisai's arms could he feel warmth. It's so cold. Why is the winter in the south so cold? Xiao Qi complained as he withdrew his claws. Yes, Ao Daisai did not understand. It was not snowing outside. They were in the North Pole all year round. The last time they lived in the Central Plains, it would occasionally snow, but it was not as cold as now. Of course, because he used to have thick fur on his body, his two claws were bare now. In the past, there was a small quilt to cover him in winter, but now there was nothing. The cold wind blew at night. Xiao Qi, who was hungry, pushed her boyfriend with her claws. Go down and give me one. Oh no, 2 small dried fish. It was too cold outside. He did not want to go out. Ao Daisai, he remembered that 10 minutes ago, he had just brought her a pine cone, but he still left the nest and grabbed a handful of small dried fish. Xiao Qi ate the small dried fish happily. Not long after, she said, I want to poop, but it's so cold outside, especially the place where they poop. It was so cold. His butt would freeze. Ao Daisai, if you want to eat pine cone, I can bring it over. If you want to eat small dried fish, I can also bring it over. But I can't help you bring the toilet over. So he had to go by himself. That was the reason. But Xiao Qi still felt very annoyed. It was so cold outside. Why don't you lift your butt and poop on the ground outside? I'll clean it up. Ao Daisai gave up persuading the little cutie to go to the toilet. No matter how thick-skinned Xiao Qixi was, she could not do it. If he did not make a decision now, he would have to poop out. He quickly put down the small dried fish and rushed out as fast as he could. A series of clear tapping sounds came from the quiet cave. Not long after, another series of tapping sounds came. A furry ball came back with cold air and shivered in Ao Daisai's arms. Ao Daisai hugged him lovingly. After the cold night and morning, the temperature at noon rose. Every time this happened, Xiao Qixi would come back to life. So the two of them went from sleeping late and waking up early in the summer to sleeping early and waking up late in the winter. The day's activities began when the sun was high in the sky. It was going to be winter. The people in the park were quite worried that the white peacock father would not be able to take his cub through the winter. However, when the two of them left the cave, the drone went into their house to take a look and found a dazzling array of food. Professor Han had been worried about the peacock eggs in the second half of the year. He had no choice but to pay less attention to the father and son. When he saw the plastic bags and egg roll boxes in the cave, he was slightly stunned. However, he quickly remembered that the white peacock used plastic bags to steal eggs half a year ago. They were really smart. Seeing that their cave was full of life, Professor Han was relieved. He even felt a sense of envy. His life was not as enjoyable as the father and son's. That was right. Under the warm winter sun, Ao Daisai lay on the ground and pressed a pine cone with his paws. He took out the pine, nuts inside, and peeled them for the little cutie. "I'll eat one, you eat one." Xiao Qixi peeled them quickly and took turns to eat with Ao Daisai. "I'll eat one, I'll eat another, Ao Daisai." So, Yilashanda ate 3 before it was his turn to eat one. Was this reasonable? Yilashanda. Of course, beavers. Chapter 172. The pine nuts were high in energy and were easy to fill up. Xiao Qixi ate the pine nuts and focused on herself while she peeled them for Otis. Ao Daisai knew how to peel the nuts himself, but he enjoyed the little bear peeling the nuts for him. The little bear peeled the nuts and brought them to his mouth. He tilted his head and took them. "Is it delicious?" "Delicious." The intimate interaction made Ao Daisai feel good for the whole day. Although eating and drinking was very enjoyable, the food piled up under the wall was getting less and less. Originally, it was estimated that they could eat until spring, but now it seemed that they could eat until the new year. Xiao Qixi, can you blame me for this? Probably not. Ao Daisai had a big appetite, and an adult peacock could eat a lot in a day. Yilashanda was also in the stage of eating until his father was broke, and he chewed all day long. The two of them ate about the same amount, and neither of them had the face to say that the other was a rice bucket. Besides, if they stayed at home for the winter and didn't eat anything, they really didn't know what to do. In order to ensure that there was enough food at home, Ao Daisai would go out to look for food at noon when the temperature was higher. Of course, the harvest was not as big as in autumn, and sometimes it took a long time to find a little. "It seems that I have to eat less in the future." Xiao Qixi looked at the small mountain of food reserves and sighed. Although there was a lot of food, it was not limited to eating. If you can eat, eat. You can also catch fish in the water. Ao Daisai had never been an animal that needed to store food in winter before, so he didn't have much experience. Now he knew. Save more pine nuts next year, and maybe dry some fruits. Yes, dry fruits. Xiao Qixi suddenly realized. Why didn't he think of it before? Because he was too busy before, and he couldn't let Ao Daisai do everything. Besides, he was still young, and there was a limit to how much he could help. Next year would be good, and by next winter, he would have plenty of food. Xiao Qixi was suddenly full of expectations for next winter. While animals were spending the winter in their nests, humans were also spending the winter in the new year. It was said that the flavor of the new year was getting fainter with each passing year, and that was indeed the case, especially in big cities. However, he still had to have a sense of ceremony. Otherwise, he wouldn't have any motivation in life. Xiao Qixi couldn't pinpoint the exact date of a new year, but she estimated that it was almost time. She could choose a day to celebrate the new year as she wished. Anyway, it would definitely be a sunny day. Looking at the little bear, excitedly talking about celebrating the new year, Ao Daisai was very cooperative. He had no concept of celebrating the new year. Even though he had celebrated the new year more than 10 times in his previous life, he did not have any special feelings. His impression was that there was plenty of food, and the house was decorated with colorful decorations. There were even fireworks in the sky. The fleeting splendor was Ao Daisai's deepest impression of the new year. Yulashanda would always be depressed for a few days after the New Year celebration, but Ao Daisai did not have such emotions. Therefore, he had always suspected that Yulashanda was originally a human. Of course, he did not discriminate against humans. He liked everything, even if it was a dung beetle. The next few days were indeed sunny. Xiao Qishi started to do a thorough cleaning. He was too lazy to move during the winter, so the cave was messier than during the summer. He was not young anymore and could do a lot of things. Ao Daisai flew out to look for ingredients for the reunion dinner while Little Fat Sparrow was busy. They had limited supplies and did not have any special decorations for the new year, so he hoped that Yulashanda could have a satisfying dinner. After being busy for half a day, Xiao Qishi realized that Ao Daisai was not at home. When he saw that the plastic bag that he usually used to store things was also not there, he knew that Ao Daisai had gone out to look for food. He hoped that Ao Daisai could find a lot of fresh food. However, there was not so much fresh food in the winter. Even the sprouts did not grow on the trees. Otherwise, he could bring some sweet sprouts to Yulashanda. Ao Daisai never dared to fly too far, but today he took a risk and was very lucky. He saw a bunch of red fruit that had not been eaten by other birds. It grew on the rugged cliff. This was not a problem for Ao Daisai. He happily put a bunch of red fruit into the plastic bag. These were enough for Yulashanda to eat for a few days. However, he did not pick all of them. He left half of them behind, even if he had the ability to take all of them away. On the way back, Ao Daisai planned to catch a few more fish by the river. As he flew, he saw a bright color. It was the winter sweet blooming on the mountain. It was getting late. Xiao Qishi was a little worried that Ao Daisai would not be back. Why did he take so long? Did he not want this home anymore? The reunion dinner had to be eaten early. It was meaningless when the sun had completely set. He stood at the entrance of the cave and looked out. A white figure floated over and landed lightly on the side of the cave. The cold wind blew on his face. Xiao Qishi almost could not open his eyes. However, he temporarily forgot about the cold because he saw Ao Daisai holding a winter sweet in his mouth. What a beautiful winter sweet. I was just saying that we don't have bright colors to decorate our home. This tender yellow flower is so beautiful. Xiao Qishi could not wait to put the winter sweet indoors. It would be best to put it next to the nest where they slept. He told Ao Daisai his suggestion. Ao Daisai agreed. This is food. Ao Daisai put down the plastic bag and went to arrange the flowers with the winter sweet in his mouth. Xiao Qishi's attention was temporarily pulled away from the winter sweet. He hurriedly opened the plastic bag to take a look. What did Ao Daisai bring back? First of all, a bunch of fiery red fruits came into view. He could not help but swallow his saliva. He could already imagine the taste of the fruits being crushed in his mouth. This kind of fruit was quite rare. Otherwise, he would have eaten it long ago. It seemed that Ao Daisai had flown quite far today. There were also a few fresh fish that were jumping around. It was really good. Xiao Qishi removed the dried fish from tonight's dinner. In addition to these, there were a few plant shoots that grew out of the ground. He did not remember the name of this plant. Its tender shoots tasted sweet and sour, which quenched thirst and stimulated saliva. Thank you, Ao Daisai. Xiao Qishi walked to Ao Daisai's feet and leaned against his leg to thank him. He did not expect that this new year would be so rich. His voice was a little unnatural. He was a little willful and troublesome. He had become a big bird in the wild, but he still insisted on celebrating the new year. This was really not good. He was reflecting on himself. And I'm sorry. I seem to always have some problems to trouble you. Xiao Qishi said, It's okay. I'm very happy. Ao Daisai used his mouth to hold the winter sweet branch in the mouth and lowered his head to rub the apologetic little cutie with his head. He did not find it troublesome. He knew that Yolashanda did not mean to cause trouble. Yolashanda, don't be sad. You're just using your own way to remember the friend you miss. Seeing that the little bear was still unhappy, Ao Daisai gently comforted him. Yes, his soft heart was immediately pierced. Yolashanda quickly became happy. He raised his sparkling eyes and asked Ao Daisai, "Can we eat now?" After this early dinner, the sun had not completely set. Xiao Qixi deliberately put a small portion of food in the leaves and sent it to the Great Sparrow's house. The Great Sparrow did not celebrate the New Year, but he still needed to eat dinner. "Friend, Happy New Year!" Xiao Qixi shouted in his heart. In fact, his voice was a little rough and not pleasant to hear. Chirp, chirp. The Great Sparrow's voice was much nicer. He quickly poked his head out of the nest and was very excited to see food. Back in the cave, the fragrance of the winter sweet lingered. When Xiao Qixi went to sleep that night, he felt that even his dreams were filled with the fragrance of the winter sweet. In order to let the winter sweet bloom for more than a week, the next day, the little bear ordered his boyfriend to use a fast food lunchbox to get some water from the river to grow the flowers. The drone routinely patrolled them and saw the beautiful winter sweet glasses. This peacock father and son pair were quite vain. The staff covered his face. They carry everything into the cave. This attribute is really a bit of a dog. It was unbelievable that this would happen to other peacocks, but the white peacock had a record of stealing eggs. It seemed that it was natural for him to carry things back. Was he a collector? I think the little one is a bit too. Every time he comes to the cave, he will not come back empty-handed. He will either carry a few pieces of grass or a leaf. Ah, here. The education was quite successful. Xiao Qixi. That's data from 800 years ago. He doesn't carry leaves or grass now. He only carries branches, okay? As he grew up, the nest was not wide enough. Ao Daisai would always be squeezed to the side when he woke up. Or rather, the nest was wide enough, but some birds did not sleep well. Ao Daisai used the branches Yolashanda picked up to fix the nest, although he did not mind being squeezed. Building a nest seemed to be a skill that birds had to learn. Anyway, there was nothing to do with the side, so Xiao Qixi followed suit. First, he built the structure. It actually looked good. He was very happy. Ao Daisai blinked and stuck his head out to pull out a branch from the structure Yolashanda had built. The fragile structure suddenly collapsed. "Hey, what are you doing?" Xiao Qixi was stunned. It took him a lot of effort to build it. He kept jumping and flapping his wings. He was so angry that he wanted to cry. "There are so many branches on the ground. Why did you take my branch? You did it on purpose." Woo-woo. He wanted to wait for Ao Daisai to say sorry. He didn't do it on purpose. But he didn't. Ao Daisai didn't take it seriously. He didn't seem to feel guilty at all. "You're so evil. I'm going to beat you up." Xiao Qixi realized that the other party did it on purpose. The next second, he chased after the other party and pecked him. Otis, who was being beaten up, walked around the cave twice. However, he could not get rid of Xiao Ai, who was so angry that she was about to explode. Hence, he smiled as he spread his wings and flew out. He then landed on a tree nearby and waited. "Don't come down at night if you dare." Xiao Qixi angrily guarded the entrance of the cave. When it was time for dinner, he moved a pine cone over and slowly ate it. "It's delicious. Big Qiao, are you hungry? Let's eat together." Ao Daisai. Xiao Qixi's temper came and went quickly. When the cold wind blew, he began to worry that Ao Daisai would catch a cold. He could only allow the other party to come in and ask him why he did that. The adult peacock hugged him under its abdomen and unrepentantly expressed that it didn't like the two nests in the cave. It was not pleasing to the eye. Xiao Qixi was stunned and then ecstatic. "Do you think that thing I built is a nest?" It was happy to be recognized by the strong. Although he didn't understand why the little bear was happy again, it didn't matter. Ao Daisai didn't care about these things. The nest was not fixed yet. He hoped to use up the branches before going to bed. His busy figure was reliable and handsome. The author has something to say. The morning is a little short. I'll update the chapter at 7 o'clock in the evening. In the next chapter, the little bear will grow up and can fly to his heart's content. Chapter 173. Growing up was a very mysterious thing. Xiao Qishi lived in this cave when he was 1 month old. He felt that the cave was too spacious, and there was enough space for him to run around. Ever since he started smoking, he had changed. In the past, he was half the size of an egg roll jar, and his eyes could barely reach the lid. He always felt that the dried fish in the jar could last for a long time. After a while, he became the size of an egg roll jar, and after a while, he could finally stand and lift his claws to open the lid. When he was young, the hole that Xiao Qishi could fit into was already too small. Even the biggest gap in the stone wall could not fit his head, let alone his round belly. The size was quite mismatched. Therefore, the cave that he used to think was spacious now seemed okay. It had changed from a super mansion to an ordinary mansion. After the beginning of spring, the two peacocks, one big and one small, welcomed the period of shedding. They inevitably felt that their skin was uncomfortable. In order to relax earlier, Ao Daisai would use its beak to speed up the shedding process. He was also a fierce bird. He did not even frown when he plucked his own feathers. White and fluffy feathers fell to the ground. It would be a pity to throw them away. Xiao Qishi collected them and said, "I can use them to cushion my nest next winter." Ao Daisai's feathers must be very warm. Xiao Qishi was shedding his feathers too. His neck was not long enough, and there were some parts of his body that he could not reach. Therefore, he needed Ao Daisai's help. However, Ao Daisai was not him. It did not know which feathers to shed. Sometimes, when it plucked the wrong one, there would be a shrill howl in the cave. Ao Daisai did not know what to do. He did not want to help, but the little bear's skin was uncomfortable, and rolling on the ground made his heart ache. Therefore, the following conversation happened between the two of them. Ao Daisai held a feather in its mouth and pulled it carefully. "Is it this one?" Sometimes, Xiao Qishi would say decisively, "Yes." Quickly pluck it. But sometimes he was not sure. It seemed like it was, but it also seemed like it was not. Vaguely, maybe it was. After hesitating for a long time, the little fat bird said, "Let's bet." Ao Daisai didn't want to bet with him. "Forget it. If I hurt you, you'll hit me again." The half-grown peacocks in the park were also going through the shedding period. After shedding their feathers, they became smaller and uglier. People were quite concerned about Xiao Qishi's situation. However, when they saw the photo of him without his fur, they all smiled mysteriously. Cough, cough. She was a little ugly, but she was not skinny. Little Five was supposed to be weak, but now he's the biggest. Professor Han was also helpless. Actually, this was not a healthy posture, but he did not have the guts to educate White Peacock's father. The other party's combat strength was not weak. Looking at this little peacock that had been wandering outside brought them joy that they had not felt for a long time. It was only because this period of time was very sad. 95% of the peacock eggs from last winter were wasted. However, the few little peacocks that they had now could completely heal them, giving them hope for the future. The 1-year-old peacocks began to grow beautiful, long feathers, and everyone was looking forward to their future appearance. Xiao Qishi was also looking forward to it. Looking at it now, it was still an ugly thing. Moreover, it seemed that he had shed his feathers too early. It was a little cold to live in the mountains sooner or later. He swore that he must be the first peacock in history to catch a cold, because he wore too little. Snot flowed out from his nose. It was uncomfortable. The little cutie had caught a cold. This was also the most difficult problem that Ao Daisai had encountered since raising the peacock. What he did was to prohibit Yelishanda from walking outside the nest, and let her stay in the nest to keep him warm. She ate and drank in the nest. Xiao Qishi felt that she had returned to the time when she was still in confinement. Sigh, but what could she do when she was sick? She could only stay in the nest. During the recuperation period, the big bird came to visit him. It must have noticed that he had not gone out to deliver food for too long. The patient Xiao Qishi could not get up to entertain his friends, so he begged Ao Daisai to get up and help him bring something for the big bird to eat. In order to accompany the patient to recuperate, Ao Daisai did not go out much recently. Without him flying around nearby, some small animals took a fancy to this precious place. On the day that Xiao Qixi stopped Snot, she found that a nest of red foxes had moved in next door. One male and one female, a couple, and 3 children. Some of the thatch piled up under the stone wall in their house had been stolen. Thatch attracted mosquitoes, so they didn't move the useless ones into the cave and just left them outside. If the fox used it, then so be it. What's the big deal? The male fox was very capable. The nest was hidden and spacious. It sat under the wall that was a little higher than their platform. Xiao Qixi looked up at the entrance of her cave. She could see the cute ears of the fox cubs. It seemed that they were born last winter. They were not young. Foxes generally did not move their nests, unless that nest was discovered by their natural enemies. Since foxes had many natural enemies, such as all kinds of birds of prey flying in the sky, wolves and lynxes running on the ground, large reptiles, and so on, the other party moving in here actually had a big impact on them. However, Xiao Qixi did not care. The foxes must know that there were 2 peacocks living here. They were not worried about hurting each other with their cubs, so he and Ao Daisai were not afraid. Ao Daisai, do you want to drive them away? After thinking about it, he still had to ask Ao Daisai for his opinion. If the other party was not willing, then forget it. Yulashanda obviously wanted to be neighbors with small animals. Ao Daisai knew this, but he still pretended to consider it. Until Yulashanda showed him her claws, he smiled and said, "It's okay." They and the foxes were not on each other's menu. But Ao Daisai kindly reminded, "Look after your pet. That kind of bird could be hunted by neighbors. It's a friend." Xiao Qixi corrected him. Didn't he have feelings for the big bird recently? He officially upgraded the other party to his own friend. Thinking about it, this kind of friend came to visit a patient with a small cold. This kind of friend was too precious. It was not bad for the fox family to live here. At least, birds of prey would not come near here, Xiao Qixi thought very conceitedly. After all, there was eagle blood here. Indeed, after the fox family moved here, the birds of prey they often saw in the sky seemed to have disappeared. They did not see a single one for several days. The fox parents seemed to like the stable life here. Xiao Qixi often secretly saw the fox father go out to look for food during the day and rush back in the evening to protect the nest. He was really a good father. Not long after, the parts account updated a video of the little peacock peeking at the red fox going down the mountain and was caught red-handed by the other party. The 2 cute little animals looked at each other across the air. Both parties were shocked and quickly hid. This is the little peacock's new neighbor, a nest of red foxes. They get along very well. The park's little brother wrote, "People of this age more or less had some social pressure, maybe from work or maybe from family life. When they saw such a heartwarming video, their tense minds would involuntarily relax a little. Looking at small animals still makes people feel good. They felt that it was great that the little peacock had a new neighbor. In the past, they thought that the place was desolate. Now, in just a short year, it had become very lively. Yulashanda put on a painful mask. Of course, the great tits start practicing their voices at 5 a.m. Every time at this time, they want to eat roasted tits. Yulashanda did not have a good appetite for a few days when he was sick. He looked a little thinner. Although he insisted that it was just a phenomenon and that if there were no accidents, he would not gain weight in the future. An adult peacock should look like an adult peacock. Baby fat would completely become a thing of the past. Ao Daisai still did not believe it. Maybe he thought that he could grow it back if he ate more. These few days, he became a heartless feeding machine again. Ao Daisai did not see the chubby Yulashanda return after a month of feeding. Only then did she accept reality and even feel a little disappointed. Why was she disappointed? This was inexplicable. It was like a parent who was very pleased that their child had worked hard for so long and finally stepped into society and was going to be independent. However, they still felt a little disappointed. Maybe it was because the scene of the baby giggling in their arms felt like it was just yesterday. Ao Daisai felt the same. Yulashanda's 1-month-old appearance appeared in his mind from time to time. At that time, she would walk unsteadily and fall down. She would cry and blow out a snot bubble. He did not expect that she would grow up in the blink of an eye and no longer need to rely on him. What a pity. Xiao Qixi. Really? But he felt that he was not that independent. When he was sick, he even used Ao Daisai's feather to wipe his snot. In short, he felt that he needed Ao Daisai in all aspects. Xiao Qixi did not know how to comfort the depressed man. After thinking for a while, he came up with a funny trick of dancing for him. However, it seemed to be very effective. Ao Daisai watched with great interest. Not only was he not depressed, but he was also very excited. After that, he said in a domineering tone, "Do you want another one?" Xiao Qixi, who was still bald, rolled his eyes. "Why don't you go to heaven?" But soon he stopped being bald. This time, the feathers that grew out were emerald green. Under the sunlight, they did not look good, although only a little of them had grown out. Yulashanda treasured these newly grown green feathers. If not for Ao Daisai finding him troublesome, he would have gone to the riverside many times a day to look at himself, because he was beautiful. For the time being, he did not know how to fly. When he went to the riverside, he needed Ao Daisai to carry him. Logically speaking, he could learn to fly. However, Ao Daisai did not mention it, and neither did he. This was also quite good. Xiao Qixi knew that children were not the only ones who had to go through puberty. Parents also had to adapt to this period. During this period, he needed to adapt well. When Ao Daisai took the initiative to mention it, he would learn to fly. Everything was for the sake of Ao Daisai's emotions. There was no need to talk about the height of the cave's entrance to the ground. That night, Ao Daisai stood at the entrance of the cave and looked at the moon. There was a full moon hanging in the sky. Yulashanda, who was still eating in the cave, looked at him. TSK, TSK. The white peacock under the moonlight was really beautiful. He quickly ate his fill and came over. However, Ao Daisai did not want him to stand there and be exposed to the wind. He immediately blocked him with his wings. "Go in and stay there. You'll get sick." God, it had been a long time since he felt sick. Moreover, the feathers on his wings had grown back. Half of his tail had also grown out. "No, I'm very strong now." In order to gain Ao Daisai's trust, Xiao Qixi flapped his wings hard. He even felt that he would fly if he used a little more strength. "Really?" Ao Daisai looked at Yulashanda's eyes, full of doubts. "In that case, I will teach you to fly tomorrow." Xiao Qixi opened his mouth. Huh? His first reaction was that there was nothing to see about the moon. He should go back to sleep. The author had something to say. He was scared. Chapter 174. Since Ao Daisai did not mention anything about flying after that, Xiao Qixi thought that Ao Daisai was just trying to scare him. That was great. He could delay his execution. Well, he now dared to admit that he was afraid of flying. This was a weakness that everyone had. He cannot be as fearless as Ao Daisai and easily conquer the sky. Xiao Qixi was not ashamed of it. Who knew that Ao Daisai was not trying to scare him. He was serious. The next morning, he brought him to the cave and asked him to glide down. Every day, Ao Daisai would carry him on his back to demonstrate gliding skills. Logically speaking, he should already be familiar with the feeling of gliding with the wind. Therefore, Ao Daisai's tone was as casual as what they were eating today. He did not consider Yulashanda's feelings at all. Xiao Qixi was very grateful for his boyfriend's trust, but he could not do it. He pretended to be stupid and climbed onto Ao Daisai's back. "Aya, why are we staying here? I'm so hungry. Let's go down and find food." The baby had grown up. Now, he was only slightly smaller than Ao Daisai. Ao Daisai hid to the side and prevented him from climbing on his back. At the same time, he looked serious and said in a much more serious tone than usual, "Don't be afraid. It's just like parachuting. You're not even afraid of parachuting. This is also very simple." Ao Daisai did not understand why Yulashanda was not even afraid of parachuting, but was afraid of gliding down. How can it be the same? This argument caused Xiao Qixi to strongly deny it. He excitedly flapped his wings and retorted, "Parachuting has perfect equipment. It's a military item, and its quality is guaranteed." When he was parachuting, he was confident. Moreover, he did not need to operate it. Wasn't there someone else to carry him? But this pair of wings had not been used yet. Who knew if it was useful? It was natural for him to be afraid. Ao Daisai pondered for a moment. "But you'll have to fly eventually." When Xiao Qixi heard this, she felt as if she had heard a mother telling her daughter that she would get married one day. It made her feel complicated. However, what he said was also true. Wasn't he going to fly sooner or later? But not today. Xiao Qixi stretched out her wings and waved. "Why don't we fly tomorrow? I think the wind today is a little unsuitable." "It's suitable," Ao Daisai answered responsibly. He was a professional. Wah wah wah. It was all the moon's fault. Yulashanda struggled for a moment and thought about it for a moment. The mountain breeze from the entrance of the cave ruffled his beautiful feathers. He stood there stiffly with his chest puffed out. He didn't even dare to look straight down. He could only turn his head and look with one eye. While they were in a stalemate, the great sparrow poked its head out of the cave to watch the fun. It seemed to understand that its friend was learning how to fly. It chirped a few times as if to encourage him. "Friend, come on." Not only were Yulashanda's cute neighbors watching the fun, but there were also drones that appeared from time to time. They captured the white peacock, teaching the little peacock how to fly. The workers were not only shocked, but also worried that something bad might happen. The green peacocks in the park didn't fly anymore. It seemed that there was no need for them to fly, so this skill had slowly deteriorated. It wasn't strange that wild white peacocks could fly, but the little peacock had inherited its parents' genes. Could it surpass its parents and become the first green peacock to fly in so many generations? Xiao Qixi didn't want to make a fool of himself in front of his friend. Moreover, the other party was a friend who could fly. He immediately switched to his other paw and took a small step forward. "You can do it. Open your wings, Yulashanda." Ao Daisai's voice was gentle. Unknowingly, she had quietly appeared behind Yulashanda. "Don't push me," Xiao Qixi swallowed and warned. However, he couldn't deny that Ao Daisai's proximity made him feel a little safer. The other party's voice was bewitching. After listening to her, he opened his wings. "Okay, I won't push you," Ao Daisai agreed. Then a gust of wind blew. She took the lead and rode the wind from behind. Her graceful figure flew over Yulashanda's head, leaped out of the cave, and glided down the mountain. "Look at me, Yulashanda." Yulashanda's mouth was slightly open. She couldn't take her eyes off the other party's fairy-like appearance. For the 1,000th time, she sighed. Ao Daisai was so beautiful. The great sparrow on the tree was probably envious. Maybe he was thinking, "My friend's parents are so nice." When they first learned how to fly, they were directly thrown out of the nest by their parents. Fox cubs were very curious about everything. They stuck out their ears from high places and peeped at their neighbors' movements. Their mother was worried that this would attract attention, so she kept them in the nest from time to time. However, she was also curious about what was happening downstairs. Someone sent a message in the work group. "Everyone, come and see. White Peacock is teaching Little Peacock how to fly." Suddenly, the number of people behind the screen that was connected to the drone increased. Similarly, they were all praising White Peacock's patience. "He is demonstrating to Little Peacock what to do. I can't bear to watch. The probability of disappointment is too high." Most people still believe that Little Peacock could not surpass his father's generation. The probability of him flying was not high. Moreover, he is still a little fat. Someone raised the second problem. After losing weight, Yulashanda's figure became more proportionate. However, he still could not get rid of the word sturdy. Anyway, it was not light at all. A few minutes later, Ao Daisai flew back from outside. The first thing he said was to tilt his head and ask Yulashanda, "Did you watch carefully just now?" "Yes." "You watched carefully," Xiao Qixi thought. Ao Daisai. "Okay, then it's your turn to try." "Try? Try what?" "Boo-hoo, I don't want to try." Ao Daisai. "I'm scared." Xiao Qishi did not want to be brave anymore. His two trembling claws clenched tightly onto the ground. I'll follow you. It's okay. Ao Daisai leaned forward and intertwined his neck with Yulashanda's neck. He patiently encouraged his partner. Flying is easy. Your ability is enough to conquer it. You have to believe in yourself, just like how you believe in me. Don't you believe in me? Xiao Qishi definitely believed Ao Daisai. What he said made sense. He was not weak. However, because it was his first time being a bird, he did not understand how a bird could fly. All right, he took a deep breath. He should listen to Ao Daisai. He would follow him. He was not afraid. Little Peacock spread his wings and seemed to be preparing to fly. Countless pairs of eyes stared at him. They were all nervous for him. This was the famous scene of an adult bird teaching its young to fly. However, this adult bird was unbelievably gentle. It would not kick its young to the ground like an eagle. It was a violent education. Don't be afraid. The wind will lift you up. Okay. Xiao Qishi was almost mentally prepared. Very good. I'll count to 3 and you'll fly out, okay? Ao Daisai suggested. After getting the other party's agreement, he smiled and slowly counted. This would be the most gentle 123 Yulashanda had ever heard. 1, 2, 3. Xiao Qishi didn't act shamelessly. When the other party counted to 3, he bent his knees and pushed himself forward with his claws. His sharp beak pointed forward like an arrow piercing through the wind. Then, he flapped his wings and adjusted his direction. Since he was gliding, he spread his limbs wide open. If the direction was correct, there was no need to deliberately adjust. The moment Yulashanda flew out, Ao Daisai was stunned. He thought that the little guy would act shamelessly and was mentally prepared to count 5 or 6 times. After being stunned for a second, he hurriedly flew out and followed the other party's path. At first, he covered the sky above. Later, he felt that this was not very good, so he flew below Yulashanda so that the other party could see him. This way, he would feel more secure. The 2 peacocks flew out one after another. The big peacock stuck close to the little peacock the whole time. The humans were stunned and felt that this scene was very touching. A father's love was like a mountain. Using these words to describe this warm gliding was the most appropriate. The little peacock was also very brave. It could only be said that this was a biological instinct. Even if his father had forgotten the ability to fly, as long as he returned to the wild and was carried by an adult bird in the wild, everything could be turned around. It was a little shocking. Who would believe that this was the first time the little peacock flew? Before this, no one thought highly of him. He was a fat and spoiled guy. This is great. Hurry up and make a video. The first green peacock that can fly. Oh my God. The staff was very excited. Can I imagine that there will be more and more green peacocks that can fly in the future? Everything returned to a few decades ago, when plants and animals were full of vitality. This father and son gliding education was immediately edited into a video and posted on the internet. Flying required so much courage. Fortunately, the patient adoptive father was always by his side to protect him. I'm a little touched. I saw how family is like. The love between animals is so pure. Even if they're not biological, and even if they are of different species, he still raised him. White Fairy's big son has finally learned to fly. He can fly with such a small body. Amazing. Haha, he's big. He's really big. If he doesn't learn to fly soon, his father won't be able to carry him. This single father is so outstanding. Have you seen their house? It's neat and tidy. When the white and green peacock's house was mentioned, many netizens expressed that their own house was not as tidy as the animal's house. What's wrong with the single father? He still raised the baby well. But when the baby grows up, will they be separated in the future? When all the young birds left the nest, it meant that the parents would look for their second love. The white peacock's father was too good. Many people hoped that after he raised the green peacock, he would find a female white peacock and have a bunch of babies of his own. They would definitely be as good as him. Didn't he love raising children? When the time came, he could raise the babies with the female peacock. The netizens were chattering nonstop. They didn't know that they were thousands of miles away from the truth, and they were getting further and further away. The little peacock practiced gliding a total of 3 times that day. When he was sleeping at night, he groaned and complained that his wings were sore. The next moment, he said that his thigh muscles were strained and he needed to be massaged. This was the consequence of not exercising. Aodicei used the back of its beak to massage his thigh while telling the truth. Exercise more every day in the future, and your wings won't be sore anymore. It was true. For example, if one hadn't played badminton for a long time, and one day he suddenly played for a few hours on a whim, then he was done for. His whole body would hurt for at least a week before he could recover. Xiao Qixi was such an unlucky badminton player. The next day, he asked for sick leave from Aodicei. It wasn't that he was lazy, but he really couldn't lift his wings. Lying in his nest with his 2 paws facing the sky, he was a useless bird. Before the little peacock fell asleep, his neck was straight, but after he fell asleep, his neck was crooked. To be honest, this Yulashanda was a little funny. Aodicei thought that he was very cute, so it engraved the cute Yulashanda in its mind. Because he didn't exercise normally, he might strain his muscles while learning to fly. After a full 4 days, the soreness on his body finally subsided. Xiao Qixi continued to practice gliding in front of his house. This time, his arms and legs weren't sore anymore. After overcoming the fear of high altitudes, everything else became simple. Alexander even gave himself special treatment. When he glided to a distance of about 5 meters above the water, he flapped his wings and made a hovering motion. However, he hadn't fully mastered the technique yet, so the speed of his descent became faster. Aodicei saw this and immediately flew down to catch him. You are too impatient. Hovering is too difficult for you now. Hovering was relying on technique to stop oneself in the air. The brave attempt failed as expected. Xiao Qixi stepped on his boyfriend's back and let him carry him up to the cave entrance to do it again. Practice gliding well. Don't worry about the rest. Aodicei sent the little cutie up and gently reminded him, what if I don't catch you? This was a threat. It must be a threat. Xiao Qixi wasn't afraid of falling into the water. He was afraid of nothing but water. Last summer, because he was too young, he didn't dare to soak in the water. Aodicei clearly didn't let him. This year, he was all grown up. It was time to pick up his swimming skills. Next time, Yulashanda still didn't repent and played a trick at the end of the gliding. In the end, it also ended in failure. The worst result was falling into the water. Originally, he was mentally prepared and even adjusted his diving position, the kind that could get a high score. However, Aodicei flew over in time to catch him. Yulashanda's wish to fail was ruined. Didn't you say that you won't catch me again? We're all older guys like this. They didn't mean what they said. Aodicei lazily exposed Yulashanda, who was deliberately provoking him with words. Don't think that I can't see that you want to swim. The weather wasn't too warm now. He wouldn't do as the other party wished. After practicing again and again, Xiao Qixi felt that his gliding skills were already very good. He repeatedly asked to move to the next stage, but was repeatedly rejected. Aodicei believed that gliding was the foundation. After the foundation was laid, nothing would happen to him. It sounded very reasonable. Therefore, Xiao Qixi patiently repeated the boring gliding practice day after day. Time passed quietly during this process. During the time when Aodicei was teaching Little Bear to fly, he had more confidence and understanding in flying. He taught all he knew to his partner. In just a few short months, Xiao Qixi had changed from a rookie standing at the edge of the cave and shivering at the beginning to an expert who could land smoothly no matter what position he used to jump out of the cave. Sometimes he would jump out with his eyes closed. Sometimes he would jump out with his back facing the cave. He was already familiar with the feeling of the wind passing by him. He knew how to use it to achieve his own goals. Everything that floated in the air and didn't touch the ground was no longer the source of fear, but a symbol of freedom. Xiao Qixi once again jumped out of the cave with his eyes closed. He didn't do anything with his wings open. When his body was not far from the ground, his 2 huge and bright wings suddenly flapped. His smooth and beautiful body swept across the water, and his claws naughtily scooped up a handful of water. There were no rocks around for him to land on. He showed off his skill of turning around on the water. His body, which was more than a meter long, almost turned into a circle. This naughty and beautiful green peacock finally landed on a rock in the water. Yelashanda, who had been busy studying recently, hadn't carefully observed his own figure for a long time. Now that he was out alone, he tilted his head to look at the water. His long and thick tail feathers were almost fully grown. Unlike Aodai's ethereal aura, Yelashanda's tail feathers were very mysterious and gorgeous. It was filled with a strong, exotic charm. Especially when he tilted his head to look at himself, it added a bit of cuteness. The author has something to say. Don't call Chow Chow little fat peacock anymore. He's out of your league now. Chapter 175. Yelashanda was stunned by the beautiful reflection in the water. He always knew that the green peacock was beautiful, but he didn't expect it to be this beautiful. It was different from the impression he saw in the zoo. He felt that his feathers were shining, and his body shape and lines were just right. Was this the difference between growing in the wild and being raised in captivity? The workers in the park also wanted to know the answer to this question. They were all spoiled since childhood, and the little peacocks in the park had better food and living conditions. They also didn't lack the company of their parents. However, Little Fi's body had grown to 2 meters, and he had already transformed into a gorgeous male green peacock. As for his brothers and sisters, they could only be considered healthy. His tail feathers were not fully grown, and his body was not as plump and beautiful. If they had to be described, they were more ordinary. The green peacock had always been famous, but it had to be said that sometimes the official video of the green peacock would be questioned by some people. Was this the famous green peacock? It didn't look that beautiful, and it didn't look as good as the white peacock. It couldn't even compare to the blue peacock. Wait, it was too hurtful. It was possible that the green peacock now wasn't beautiful enough. In the final stage of the survival of the species, appearance was all fake, and it was understandable that its appearance had declined. However, the green peacock a few decades ago was really beautiful. Of course, they couldn't use old photos to convince everyone. There was no need, until the green peacock in the wild grew up, and everything suddenly changed. To be honest, people didn't have any expectations for Little Fi's appearance at first. After all, this guy plucked himself until he was bald at the beginning of spring. Perhaps it wasn't him who did it, but the white peacock did it for him. In short, it was fine as long as he was healthy. It didn't matter what he looked like. Later on, his feathers grew out, and he looked a lot more pleasing to the eye. However, he was still just a slightly more beautiful chicken and wasn't outstanding. Who would have thought that in just a few short months, when the weather was completely warm, the ordinary little fat peacock's feathers grew crazily, and he looked different every day. It was estimated that in a week's time, his body length would exceed 130 centimeters. He had accidentally obtained a wild green peacock. His beautiful videos and photos had already been posted on the official account. Many people praised him, saying that he had changed 18 times since he was young. The cute little fat boy had grown into a little prince. Some people even said, "I'm so ugly now. It must be my dad's fault. Is it too late to find a handsome guy to be my dad?" Indeed, Little Five was an egg that had escaped from the park. He should have looked like his father, but in reality, he looked different from the green peacocks in the park. His temperament was completely different. If one had to say who he resembled more, it would definitely be the white peacock father who had painstakingly raised him. He was an elegant, beautiful, intelligent, and gentle male fairy who treated his son very well, but was cool and domineering to the outside world. Back then, many people thought that White Peacock had raised an ugly son and that they were not compatible. Now that they saw the transformation of the ugly son, he was not ugly at all. He could be said to be a little prince. There was no part of his body that was not beautiful. When he tilted his head slightly to admire himself, even the wind was afraid to disturb him. A male green peacock that had transformed into such a beautiful being was a rather precious existence. While admiring him, people began to consider the issue of reproduction. It was impossible to bring him back to the park when he was so big, and people couldn't bear to deprive him of his freedom. Therefore, the only feasible method left was to send peacocks of the right age to the park during the breeding season. Maybe they would fall in love with each other and have a romantic encounter. However, there was no hurry now. The good-looking little prince was only 1.5 years old. He would only participate in the breeding operation at least next spring. On the screen, the little prince admired his own figure for a while. As if he had rested enough, he spread his wings and flew up. The moment he opened his wings, the orange-red feathers at the end of his wings were stunning. Taking off in place was a skill that Yelishanda had been learning recently. Compared to jumping down from a hanging wall, taking off in place required more power. He successfully flew up. This time, he was flying in the direction of the forest. In fact, this was also the main reason why he had sneaked out. Flying in the forest was more dangerous. There was a possibility of being caught by branches or being attacked by wild beasts in the mountains. Ao Daisai did not allow him to fly into the forest to play unless the other party accompanied him personally. At first, Qiao Qishi was very obedient. After all, he felt that his boyfriend was an experienced driver. The other party's worries must be reasonable, even if he felt that he would not screw up. However, the whole summer was about to pass. The progress of learning to fly was very slow. If he did not master it before the cold weather came, he would be too lazy to fly when winter came. It was because Qiao Qishi sneaked out alone that the drone was lucky enough to capture the beautiful scene of him flying through the forest alone. This was the first time the green peacock was photographed going out alone. Perhaps this was a symbol of growing up. Sooner or later, he would have to live by himself. The white peacock's father, who loved him, would also let go of his child sooner or later and let him be independent. This little guy flies really well. He is very experienced in measuring distance. After seeing the green peacock fly through the branches a few times, people could not help but praise him. Of course, people who often watched knew that this green peacock loved his feathers very much. Like all naughty children who came out to play behind their parents' backs, people saw him play in the forest and then come to the small waterfall to wash his face and feet and catch fish. He was tired from playing and hungry. At this time, it was not early. Qiao Qishi planned to eat a few fish and bring some back to coax Ao Daisai. The guy who knew that he had sneaked out to play but had not done anything until now. Could it be that he was angry? He was afraid that Ao Daisai would be angry, so he did not go back. After all, it would not be so easy to sneak out to play next time. He might as well play to his heart's content this time. With that in mind, Qiao Qishi pulled out a fat clamshell from the water. He was instantly stunned. He stared at the clamshell left and right. He could imagine that the meat inside must be delicious, but he could not think of any way to open the shell. It was useless to use his claws to clamp the clamshell up and smash it against a rock. After all, his body weight added up to about 5 kilograms. It was not enough to break the clamshell open. Through the screen, people could see the little peacock's frustration. Yes, although he had grown up, people were still used to calling him Little Peacock. Qiao Qishi was troubled by the clamshell. He was very depressed. Although he knew that there was nothing difficult in the world as long as he was willing to give up, he was hungry. He did not want to give up. Yelishanda was about to go home, but a damn clamshell stopped him in his tracks. Ao Daisai already knew that Yelishanda had sneaked away from him when he was sleeping soundly, but he chose to turn a blind eye to it. Even when the sky was filled with rosy clouds, the person who was supposed to return was still not back. Ao Daisai, who had previously decided to give the other party some freedom, did not hesitate for a minute. He immediately flew out to search for him. "Are you still not going home?" Ao Daisai asked. He did not think that Yelishanda was in danger because he was very quiet. When Ao Daisai rushed to the scene, the quiet Yelishanda was cracking the clamshell. God knows how many times the fat clamshell fell from the sky and smashed against a rock. Finally, with a loud crack, it shattered. "That's great." The staff cheered for the little peacock's success. Then they saw the white peacock floating over. They did not know if it was an illusion, but they felt that the white peacock was here to bring a child home. This time, the little peacock who sneaked out to play was going to be scolded. However, that scene did not happen. Instead, the little peacock who was rushing towards the ground suddenly changed its direction excitedly and pounced on the white peacock. Ao Daisai, I'll treat you to clam meat. Just now, he had smashed the clamshell a few times and finally broke it open. He was very happy now. Ao Daisai, who was originally a little angry, was startled. Then, his eyes became very gentle and he intimately rubbed against his partner. So it was the food that stopped Yolashanda from going home. If that was the case, his anger dissipated. There is nothing in the world that could make Yolashanda forget everything better than food. Did you just wake up? After rubbing against each other, they looked at each other affectionately. In their eyes, other than containing the reflection of each other, there was also a dazzling rosy glow. Yes, Ao Daisai touched Qiao Qishi's face again. From a human's point of view, it looked like they were kissing. But based on their current relationship, no one would think that way. They only felt that the father and son's relationship was very good, and they were very good-looking. Just now, the white peacock had not arrived. Everyone was immersed in the green peacock's sparkling beauty. They thought that since the green peacock was so beautiful, the plain white peacock could not compare. Speak of the devil. The setting sun added a layer of gold to the white peacock's feathers. When the other party slowly landed and stood still, no one could take their eyes off him. Indeed, when the father and son appeared on the screen, people could not help but secretly compare. Who was more beautiful between the white and the green? Little did they know that when they stood together, people did not have time to think about who was more beautiful. They were both very beautiful. They were so beautiful together that they were like gods. The only difference was that age and experience created a different aura. After all, the father was the father. He was more mature and introverted. The son was not only a son but also a younger brother. He was often mischievous. The drone had captured the little peacock using his claws to hook the father's tail feathers more than once. The reason was probably because he was bored. After the two very eye-catching male peacocks greeted each other intimately, they walked to the clamshell to eat together. Ao Daisai's flexible beak picked up the broken shells and threw them away piece by piece. The first large piece of meat that he took out was given to Yolashanda. He had to use a lot of force to take out the remaining shell. Perhaps the result of doing this would make the little bear think that the shell was more delicious. The other party mumbled that he wanted to exchange with him. Ao Daisai had no choice but to find a new clamshell and take out the shell for the little bear to eat. The food nourished by the mountain spring water tasted very delicious. Later, they dug out a few fat clams from the water. The little peacock, who always liked to slack off, as expected, handed the job of breaking the clams to the white peacock. Perhaps even he himself had not accepted the fact that he had grown up. The white peacock was willing to spoil him, and the staff who watched him grow up could not criticize him at all. After dinner, the sky was already dark. Ao Daisai finally brought the full Yolashanda home. The two gorgeous figures swept across the sky together. Although the effect was not as graceful as the day under the sun, the mood was very beautiful. The sun is so beautiful. The white peacock is so good at raising him. For a long time in the future, such comments would occupy the comment section. Netizens, who often had different opinions, agreed unanimously this time that the white and green peacocks were equally beautiful, and neither was inferior to the other. Seeing them fly together is so eye-catching. Can the officials release more videos of them flying? There were many comments like this. It was rare to have two peacocks who could fly. Even without the public's request, the park would collect a lot of materials. Moreover, the white and green peacock really liked to fly together. The chances of them appearing alone were very low. Single photos had become a rare existence. They were so close to each other. Did the little peacock not plan to leave the nest before the breeding season in the second half of the year? He could already live alone. But the white peacock seemed to cherish his only son. Until now, it had not chased him out. This was unusual. Male peacocks who were around 4 years old were young and energetic. They had a strong desire to reproduce. What do you think is the problem? The professors who had studied peacocks for a lifetime had once again kicked an iron plate on the same peacock. Maybe they want to accompany each other for a longer period of time. Some people hesitantly expressed that since the existing written knowledge could not be answered, they could only guess. But peacocks do not have emotional needs. They did not have feelings. If it was a mammal, it could be guessed. But peacocks did not have the conditions to have feelings for other species. They could not find a reason why the two male peacocks did not want to separate. People could only hope that during the breeding season in the second half of the year, which was July or August, they would go out to meet the female peacocks. However, they did not. For these 2 months, the peacock's life was the same as before. During the day, they would go out to play and eat clams. At night, they would hug each other and sleep together. Looking at the other peacocks mating, although the netizens liked the gorgeous little prince, it did not prevent them from covering their eyes and ridiculing this young man. He had grown up and was always by his father's side. How could his father go out and give him a younger brother or sister? But they did not really blame him. It was good to see them living happily together. It was good to have a younger brother or sister, but it was not a pity if they did not. The author has something to say. Got a problem? Thief card, _____. Chapter 176. Xiao Qixi, who had not been able to surf the internet for many years, did not know that he was being watched. He did not know that others regarded him and Ao Daisai as a loving father and son. This was very awkward. Fortunately, he did not know either. He did what he was supposed to do and did not distance himself from Ao Daisai because of the existence of the drone. The most important thing now was that the cold winter was coming. Last year, Xiao Qixi vowed that he would work hard to collect supplies this year. However, this year he did not want to move. It was so hard to work. Why should he work? When he was not hungry, Xiao Qixi did not want to catch fish or pick pine cones. Perhaps it was because he was young and energetic. He wanted to play now. He even wanted to fly to a distant place to take a look. Standing in the water, he raised his head and looked into the distance. His eyes were thoughtful. Ao Daisai did not think so much. He focused on catching fish. Occasionally, he would see Little Bear slacking off, but he did not have the intention to scold him. In his mind, he felt that working was not the responsibility of Little Bear. He alone was enough. Perhaps Xiao Qixi's absent-mindedness attracted Ao Daisai's attention. He picked up a small fish and fed it to Xiao Qixi. Thank you. Xiao Qixi was not hungry, but he gladly accepted the fish. Ao Daisai, let's go abroad this winter, okay? After careful consideration, he said his thoughts. The winter in this city is a bit cold. Maybe other cities will be warmer. The climate of each city in Yunnan was different. The city they were currently in was not hot in the summer, but it was cold in the winter. If Xiao Qixi remembered the map correctly, they could fly all the way south to a place called Ban Na. It was very hot in the summer, but not cold in the winter. Leaving the familiar home to spend the winter in another place was a big decision, but Ao Daisai nodded and agreed without hesitation. Migration was too familiar to him. Ao Daisai chose to settle down here because Little Bear was still young. Now that the Little Bear could fly, Ao Daisai was no longer obsessed with staying here. Worried that Ao Daisai would be reluctant to leave home, Xiao Qixi quickly comforted her. We'll come back when the weather warms up. We're just going out for the winter, just like how we migrated in the past. He even flapped his wings when he got excited. He was afraid that Ao Daisai would be unhappy. After all, they had spent a lot of effort to decorate the cave. Ao Daisai was not unhappy. He had already started a plan for the trip, such as bringing food reserves. Okay, we'll leave in a week. Xiao Qixi nodded. They continued to collect food this week, but they didn't catch any more fish because they didn't have time to dry them. In the last 2 days, Xiao Qixi did not go out. He was responsible for peeling pine nuts at home, eating them as he peeled them. In just 2 days, he gained a little weight. Although there would be food on the road, no one could be sure. He had a big child with him, so of course he had to carry a big bag when he went out. In the eyes of others, their unusual behavior was once again puzzled. What were they doing? A week later, at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, the two peacocks got up and prepared to go out. The plastic bags containing the food reserves were tightly tied up and held by Ao Daisai. Xiao Qishi grabbed a small one as well. It was filled with lighter dried fish. The big sparrow on the tree outside the door was still asleep. Usually, he woke up early in the morning to chirp and wake Xiao Qishi up. Now, it was Xiao Qishi's turn to wake him up. Big sparrow, we're going out for the winter. See you in the spring. Xiao Qishi happily gave him a handful of dried fish, full of anticipation. The other handful of dried fish was given to Fox's family. Then, he and Ao Daisai left overnight. Yes, because they did not want the drones to know their movements. It was the first time they were going out so far, so nervous. As everyone knew, flying in the front was the most tiring. Ao Daisai flew in the front from the beginning and let the little bear stay behind him. Xiao Qishi did not argue with him. When the sun rose, it was estimated that 2 hours had passed. Xiao Qishi flapped his wings and flew in front of Ao Daisai. Let me try. He did not want to be the one being protected forever. He could also protect his partner. Ao Daisai's eyes narrowed slightly, overflowing with warm light, as if to say, okay. Who could say that he was not happy now? Fly was a very tiring thing. Looking at the migrating birds in the sky, most of them took turns to play the role of the leading role. That way, it would not be too tiring. There was strength in numbers. Xiao Qishi could not wait to join the big group. Damn it, if the peacock did not fly lower than the others, he would join in minutes. In one breath, they flew until the sun was high in the sky and found a place to rest. The current conditions allowed them to fly along the river so that they would not be short of water. Obviously, this was already a remote place in the mountains. The uneven terrain caused the water to be turbulent. It was impossible to catch fish, but it was possible to find a few snails in the mud. However, there was too little meat to fill Yulishanda's stomach. They still had to eat the food they brought from home. The drone that went back from maintenance last night came out again today. It was not strange to see an empty cave. Maybe the father and son went out to look for food. The big tits at the door jumped around on the branches. Chirp, 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 chirp. It was as if to say, don't look for them. They went out for the winter. The drone patrolled the place where the two peacocks often went, but there was still no trace of them. The people began to worry. Could it be that they were poached? Their first reaction was to worry that something had happened to them. Not likely. The reserve was sealed, and there had not been any poaching in a long time. The most likely possibility was that they flew away on their own. Peacocks did not stay in the same nest for long. They had lived in a cave for more than a year, so it was not impossible for them to give up this nest and find another one. The people smiled bitterly. They could only slowly search for the peacock's latest resting place. It should not be difficult to find. But they did not know that ordinary peacocks were different from those that could fly. Their next nest was directly placed in another city. It took a long time for the park to receive news about the two peacocks. That was a story for later. Xiao Qishi and Ao Daisai went all the way south and entered the territory of Bana. The first thing they felt was the warm climate and rich food. The tropical water was really super sweet. The banana forest could be seen everywhere. The two peacocks dived in and ate until the sky turned dark. However, a banana forest was guarded. When they heard hurried footsteps, they quickly ran away. The human was speaking in a dialect that they did not understand. Even so, they could hear anger and dissatisfaction. After flying to the nearby forest, Ao Daisai wiped its mouth on the bark of a tree and asked in confusion, "Why is he so fierce?" Xiao Qishi burped and was stunned when she heard what Otis said. It can't be. How can Otis ask someone why they were so fierce? Because we are stealing. That's someone else's private property. Okay? No matter if it's a human or an animal, we can't take it for ourselves. Of course, Xiao Qishi would be a fool if she didn't take advantage of the situation. Satisfied, she raised her tail and left a little trace of him here, treating it as fertilizing the bananas. All right, let's not be conflicted. Let's steal from the next shop. When they flew over just now, they saw a loquat forest in the distance. This season, not only loquats and bananas, but also eggs, oranges, and pomegranates. They could eat until they could not stop. A.O. Daisai did not feel that there was a problem with his confused speech because he did not have a sense of morality. As long as it grew from the ground, he could eat it. A.O. Daisai also liked to eat loquats. The sweet and sour taste fully stimulated his appetite. The two of them stood on the same tree, and loquat seeds kept falling from above. Woof, woof, woof. Two big dogs guarding the garden heard the noise and rushed over fiercely. Unfortunately, they did not know how to climb up the tree and could only bark under the tree. A.O. Daisai and Yulashanda, whose mouth was full of juice, did not look sideways and continued to make loquat seeds. There were so many birds eating in the garden. What was wrong with them eating as well? Discriminating against peacocks? What else could they eat other than the loquats on the tree? Wouldn't they starve to death? Although they were not afraid of dogs, they were afraid of humans. When they heard footsteps coming over, they immediately flew away. The loquat trees were taller and could block their figures. Before the humans could run over, they had disappeared without a trace. Just like that, they lived a carefree life surrounded by delicious food. The only flaw was that the environment was not very safe. It was easy to encounter humans or be chased by dogs. Actually, they could avoid being chased by dogs. As long as Yulashanda did not covet other people's garden, there was a high chance that they would not encounter humans or dogs. Xiao Qixi. Is there no way to have the best of both worlds? He wanted to eat all kinds of delicious water loquats, but he did not want to have a direct confrontation with dogs or humans. It was too difficult to be a child. For the sake of his life, A.O. Daisai did not bring him to steal from the garden anymore. Some of the farmers had air guns, and they used them to shoot birds. As for the laws protecting birds, sometimes the laws could not be enforced. In the remote mountains and forests, no one would know even if they shot the birds. Anyway, there were also water loquats in the wild, but they were not as delicious as the cultivated water loquats. Yulashanda was used to eating the cultivated water loquats. When he ate the water loquats in the mountains, he felt uncomfortable. He tasted the water loquats with his claws, and when he realized it was sour and bitter, he threw it away. Pooey, is this food for a little prince? Also, it was not safe in the mountains, and there was a possibility of being attacked any time. Of course, because they had been living in the protected area, it was very safe. Now that they were out of the protected area, they had to turn a blind eye when they slept at night. No, they had to take turns keeping watch. After a few days, A.O. Daisai was still fine, but Xiao Qixi could not stand it anymore. If the water loquat had dark circles under its eyes, he must have some on his face. Boo-hoo! When he saw the little bear dozing off during the day, A.O. Daisai could not bear to see him suffer. He asked, "Is there a protected area in this city?" If the water loquat had, he would go in and get some security. After all, he was working so hard outside. This question stumped Xiao Qixi. He did not know if there was a protected area in Bana, but he knew there was a very famous tropical zoo in Bana. But 30 years had passed, and he did not know if there was still a zoo in Bana. He scratched his face with his claws. "There's a zoo. Shall we go to the zoo for a while? Just treat it as a winter break, and when spring comes, they will break out of prison. Based on their IQ, it would be easy for them to break out of prison. Furthermore, he was the green peacock, and no one dared to do anything to him." Thinking of this, Yulashanda laughed and clamped his boyfriend's wings with his claws. A.O. Daisai, don't be afraid. I will protect you. His identity was a national pass, and he did not have to worry about food and drink no matter where he went. There was no need to explain to A.O. Daisai that animals worked. He had stayed in human society for more than 10 years and knew a lot. Yulashanda was often joked by the poop picker that he should work at a dog cafe because he ate a lot. Working at a dog cafe would not only earn him a salary, but he could also eat for free. Later, another poop picker said that no, if Dan worked at a dog cafe, they would definitely persuade him to quit after 3 days because he ate a lot and did not like to work. A.O. Daisai remembered it carefully. When Yulashanda proposed to work at the zoo during the winter break, He immediately worried whether the zoo would persuade Yolashanda to quit. After all, it was true that the little bear ate a lot, did not like to work, and was lazy. Xiao Qishi took A.O. Daisai's silence as unwillingness, but he did not know that A.O. Daisai was thinking about him. Is that okay? Let's give it a try. If it doesn't work, we will leave that night. Work was a two-way choice. No, for them, it was a one-way choice. They did not have the right to dislike the zoo. They were that confident. That's right. They would leave if it did not work. A.O. Daisai said, okay. He agreed to work at the zoo with Yolashanda and leave after the winter break. You agree, that's great. Xiao Qishi spread his wings and pounced on A.O. Daisai, overflowing with excitement. Let him calculate which direction was the tropical zoo. The Bana Tropical Zoo was located in the southwest direction. After 30 years of expansion, it was now a very large and semi-open zoo. There were many animals living in it, most of which were rescued from the wild. The South Park was open to tourists for admission, while the North Park was not open to the public because the North Park was a recuperation and living area. The animals there cultivated and lived a quiet and stable life. To put it bluntly, the South Park earned money to support the entire zoo. The animals that could work in the South Park were all healthy and gentle animals. The blue peacock was gentle and beautiful. Most of the foreign tourists who came here to play were here for the peacock. If they could take a picture of the peacock spreading its tail, it would be really happy. It was worth the ticket price. It was also best to take a picture with it. The other star of the South Garden was the elephant. It was much more popular than the peacock. Of course, they did not live in small cages. Instead, they lived in nature. The staff led the visitors to interact with the animals in a safe area. Most of the elephants were very good-tempered and especially liked to play splashing water with the tourists in the river. The scene of one elephant fighting against 10 people often happened. The tourists did not want to leave, and the elephants did not want to leave either. Therefore, the elephant group was the biggest moneymaker of the South Park. Their food was the best. There were often kind-hearted people who sent carts of food over. The food was specifically for the elephants, and the zoo could not share it with the other parks. The nannies who took care of the peacocks were very envious. When did the Peacock Garden have such a large group of loving fans who sent them carts of food? The peacocks in their garden were slim and had small appetites. They could not eat so much. When the time came, they would definitely generously share it with everyone. Of course, it was just a dream. Such a scene probably would not happen. Ordinary tourists would take a picture and leave. They would not think that the peacock could eat much. Only the elephant, who ate in big mouthfuls, would make people want to send him food. They did not know that there were 2 unemployed peacocks who were about to come to work. It was not easy to avoid the crowd and successfully find the zoo, so Xiao Qishi and A.O. Daisai spent some time on the way. When they arrived, the sky was already dark. They were already tired from flying and found the Peacock Garden by following the smell. The park was very spacious. There were several fixed feeding spots every day. The staff had just put down all the food. The blue peacocks, who had been hungry for half a day, ran around the feeding trough to eat. A.O. Daisai and Yolashanda landed at a feeding spot near the water. Their arrival did not cause any reaction from the blue peacocks who were eating. These blue peacocks were used to seeing people and were not afraid at all. But it did not matter. Yolashanda did not treat himself as a guest at all. As soon as he landed, he ran over and squeezed in to see what everyone was eating today. There were grains, water, and dice meat. That was great. Hey, please make way. Yolashanda spread his wings and squeezed the blue peacocks on both sides to the side. Then he turned his head and called out to his boyfriend. A.O. Daisai, come quickly. If they did not eat, they would finish eating. The author has something to say. Today is the overbearing Xiao Qiao. Chapter 177. The adult blue peacock was not as big as the adult green peacock, and Xiao Qishi was strong to begin with. Therefore, with his push, the spot was empty. The blue peacock that was being bullied seemed to be afraid of him and did not dare to peck him. A.O. Daisai, who was observing the environment, adhered to his habit of being cautious. When he landed, his first thought was not to eat, but to make sure there was no danger around. When he heard little Cutie's call, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he trotted over to help her snatch the food. He was a mutated blue peacock. Even though he was bigger in size, the blue peacock, which was used to seeing white peacocks, dared to peck him. Xiao Qixi, who was eating, was stunned. She looked at the bold blue peacock. Oh, Wangpu of Tianyang. He even dared to peck Ao Daisai. He did not want to live anymore. After being attacked, Ao Daisai's aura turned cold, especially his pair of red eyes, which stared at the provocateur. It was also a form of provocation. The other party immediately puffed out his chest and confronted Ao Daisai. However, there was no way he could beat Ao Daisai. Soon, Ao Daisai caught up to him 5 meters away. Not only did he run away, but he also let out a shrill howl. When Ao Daisai came back, no blue peacock dared to provoke him anymore. Xiao Qixi ate comfortably while reminding her boyfriend, Ao Daisai, it's not good for us to fight when we just arrived, right? You should restrain yourself in the future. She did not want to be scolded by the manager. Okay. Ao Daisai was stunned for a moment. His answer was straightforward, but it was not known if he took it to heart. The food in the zoo was indeed very good. Ao Daisai, who was more of a carnivore, picked the diced meat to eat. This caused the neighbor to be dissatisfied. You picked so quickly. Can I still eat? Ao Daisai. After being taught a lesson, Ao Daisai stretched his neck to snatch the diced meat of other peacocks. He did not dare to eat the diced meat in front of little Cutie. After they had a delicious meal, they began to observe their surroundings. First of all, the lawn was very spacious and surrounded by a very green lake. On one side of the lake, there was a long building. It was a covered corridor, and tourists could watch the peacocks from above. The working environment was not bad. After looking at it, they flew to a secluded area and prepared to sleep. The blue peacocks that were all over the ground had eaten their fill and found a place to rest. In such a large peacock garden, there were many places where one could live alone, but these blue peacocks seemed to be used to living in groups. They would not deliberately stay away from their own kind. Of course, no third peacock would dare to come to Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai. They were the outliers of the peacock garden. The security system here must be very good. Xiao Qixi, who was full, snuggled up to Ao Daisai and said happily, "Good night, Ao Daisai." After that, he fell asleep and no longer had to worry about waking up in the middle of the night to keep watch. They had not rested well for the past few days, so they slept until 9 in the morning. It was already past breakfast time, and even their working hours were long gone. The zoo opened at 8 in the morning. The colleagues of the blue peacocks in the peacock garden had already finished their breakfast and started work an hour ago. Xiao Qixi and Ao Daisai had just been woken up by the tourist voices. It was not particularly noisy, but they had sharp hearing, so they would wake up at the slightest noise. Xiao Qixi yawned contentedly. They had slept in the grass last night. He got up and shook his feathers. At the same time, he used his claws to touch Ao Daisai's body. The grass is a little damp, and it will be foggy at night. Why don't we build a nest? How could Ao Daisai reject Lashanda's request? He already had a plan in mind, so he nodded. He, who had just woken up, looked lazy. After a few seconds, he spread his wings and stretched. Seeing that his boyfriend's tail was stained with grass, Lashanda carefully helped him clean it. After sleeping for so long, they were already hungry. 2 peacocks, one white and one green, walked out of the forest. When they came to the feeding area, they found that the feeding trough was empty. They looked at the feeding trough, and the tourists in the corridor looked at them in a daze. They were probably thinking, these 2 peacocks are so beautiful. Damn, why are they so much better looking than the ones next to them? White peacocks had always been the center of attention. It was not that there were no white peacocks that went to work on time, but the one that had just walked out was especially different. It was bigger and had a fiercer temperament. It looked like it was very good at fighting. Its feathers were also very white and thick, especially its slender tail feathers. At a glance, it was impossible to count how many feathers there were. In short, people were not worried that it would go bald in middle age. It was as if this was what a peacock should look like. The tourists hurriedly took pictures and recorded videos. They exclaimed from time to time, "So beautiful. Damn, it has so many feathers. It will definitely look good when it opens its tail." The above was directed at the white peacock. Its companion, the green peacock, caused an even bigger commotion. Among the tourists, there were still some who knew about green peacocks. They knew that green peacocks were endangered animals. Now, there were only 20 or 30 left, and they were protected by the country. The sanctuary seemed to be in this province. Recently, it was the zoo's anniversary. Did the zoo make a big move and borrow a green peacock from the sanctuary to display? That was a blessing for the tourists. A tourist who knew the ropes shouted excitedly, "Green peacock, it's a green peacock." The tour guide was also confused. No, where did the green peacock come from? There were only blue peacocks here. The tourist should not talk nonsense. He had to take responsibility. The next second, the tour guide followed the tourist's gaze and saw a green peacock that did not fit in with the peacocks around it. First of all, it did not matter if it was a purebred green peacock. In short, its appearance looked real. Its beautiful and shiny emerald feathers. Its crest feathers were very different from the blue peacock's, and its thick tail feathers were as amazing as the white peacock beside it. The appearance of the two of them made the blue peacock next to them unable to attract the attention of the tourists. Not long after, the concept of the green peacock quickly spread among the tourists. It turned out that the zoo was holding an anniversary celebration and had borrowed the precious green peacock to display. What could be more lucky than this? The tourists were so happy that their cameras kept taking pictures. At the same time, they prayed in their hearts that this precious green peacock would open its screen. Holding an anniversary celebration? Borrowing a precious green peacock? Several staff members present were very confused. They racked their brains to recall the meeting a few days ago. They wondered if they had missed the entire meeting, because they did not know a word about the green peacock. However, the truth was in front of them. There were indeed two unfamiliar peacocks in their park. One of them was a particularly precious green peacock. Even as staff members of the zoo, they had never seen a real one. Wait, one white and one green? The excited tourists couldn't wait to share the beautiful photos they had taken on social media platforms. The caption was, "The peacocks in the Banna Tropical Zoo are so beautiful. I strongly recommend that everyone come and admire them." The tickets are not expensive, only 30 yuan. Even if you bring your whole family, it will not cost much. When the peacock lovers saw this post, they quickly recognized the two protagonists. The official account of the reserve had not been released for many days. So the news about the ferryman's father and his big brother had gone to the zoo? They excitedly and doubtfully left a comment. "I know these two peacocks. They were clearly in the forest of the reserve. How did they end up in the zoo?" This was so infuriating. The first reaction of the people was that the reserve had sent the two peacocks to the zoo to earn money. After the post owner confirmed that the two peacocks were indeed taken in the zoo, they quickly went to the reserve's official account to ask for an explanation. On the other side, the zoo staff immediately contacted their superiors to ask about the green peacock. The superiors were also confused, but because the green peacock was a serious matter, they immediately put down their work and hurried over. Seeing was believing. The superiors were also stunned when they saw the two strange and beautiful peacocks in a daze next to the food trough. Oh my God! In the middle of winter, a layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. He was indeed an experienced person. He immediately came to a conclusion. They might be wild peacocks nearby. They ran over to look for food. "Hurry, arrange the food." Wild peacocks, and one of them was a green peacock. They could not afford to neglect it. Okay. The staff immediately arranged food for the two distinguished guests. Indeed, wild green peacocks were first-class protected animals. Even if they lost a single hair, they would be investigated. The reserve was worried about losing the whereabouts of the two peacocks. However, this morning, they received a notice from netizens saying that the father and son were now in the Banna Tropical Zoo. They were accusing them of sending the two peacocks to earn money. What kind of nonsense was this? Professor Han was dumbfounded. What was going on? He would rather go to the zoo to earn money as an animal than let the green peacocks earn money. What the hell is going on? After a while, he saw the photo taken by the tourists. He did not need to look carefully to recognize that it was the one he had seen when it was born. It was now very beautiful. It did not look like a child anymore. Speaking of which, the zoo was too bold. They dared to bring the green peacocks back for display. Professor Han immediately called the zoo himself. However, the zoo was wronged because they did not have the peacocks at all. The two peacocks flew over on their own. The two of them communicated for a while before they finally figured out the truth of the matter. The two peacocks were free. They had chosen to stay in the zoo. It was that simple. Professor Han thought to himself, "Simple, my ass. Your unit must be happy." Yes, the manager of the zoo was very happy. He assured Professor Han that they would definitely entertain these two distinguished guests with good food and drinks. The other party could come and go whenever they wanted. They would not interfere at all. If the two peacocks felt comfortable staying in the zoo and did not leave, they would welcome them. Professor Han wanted to curse in his heart. What is so good about the zoo? Why not come to the center of the reserve? Because the center of the reserve was cold in winter. If it was not cold there, Xiao Qi and Ao Daisai would be happy in their own cave. They did not need to work at the zoo at all. The staff quickly arranged their breakfast. When they got closer, they were more amazed. The wild peacocks were so beautiful that the domesticated peacocks were overshadowed. It was the first time feeding wild peacocks. The staff was quite nervous. He put down the food and did not leave because he needed to record the feeding data of the two wild peacocks. The food was here. Xiao Qi tilted her head and glanced at the staff as a way of thanking him. Then, she ate without hesitation. Ao Daisai did not eat. He seemed to be worried that the human would have bad intentions. So, he stood quietly between the two. His defensive posture was self-evident. The staff immediately stepped back and tried to convey his friendliness and harmlessness. He was the best professional breeder at the moment, but he was still a little nervous. Xiao Qi comforted him. Ao Daisai, it's okay. He won't hurt us. Okay. Ao Daisai felt it. It was just a precaution. Soon he joined in the eating. The staff who observed them from afar found that the green peacocks liked to eat grains and fruits. The white peacocks liked to eat meat. The taste was more sour. The ratio of meat and vegetables they ate was opposite. It was very harmonious when they ate together. Today was a very special day for the peacock garden. It was also a very exciting day. Their superiors immediately gathered everyone for a meeting. First of all, they had to tell everyone who these two peacocks were. They were not ordinary peacocks. These two peacocks are the focus of the conservation area's research. They have countless fans on the internet. Let me tell you this. Just now, our zoo's pre-sale tickets were sold out. So, tomorrow and the day after, there will be a large number of visitors coming in. It will be very busy. Second, the two peacocks had taken the initiative to visit their zoo. They had to treat them well. There could not be any mistakes. It would be best if the two guests could feel at home and never leave their zoo again. The staff who had seen the two peacocks were very fond of them. At this time, they nodded very sincerely to express that they would work hard. In the center of the conservation area, Professor Han suddenly announced that this Sunday was a holiday. He invited everyone to visit the Bana Tropical Zoo in the neighboring city. He had already bought the tickets at a high price. It took a lot of effort. They had watched the peacocks grow up, but now they had to spend money to see them. It was very complicated. No wonder the two peacocks were so strong and their feathers so beautiful. It turned out that they ate a lot. The zookeepers found that most of the food had been eaten. The two peacocks, who were full, were cleaning up. There was running water in the drinking trough. The white peacock put his mouth in the running water, held some water, and shook his head. His mouth would be washed clean. Then it was his head and cheeks. He was originally white, but after washing, he looked like a fairy who had just come out of the bath. He looked even more pure under the sun. It was not easy to find water in the wild, so they had not bathed for a few days. Ao Daisai called Little Bear over after washing, but Little Bear had never liked bathing, especially washing his hair. "It's cold. I'll wash my mouth and claws." Xiao Qishi refused with a lot of excuses. It's not cold here. Ao Daisai disapproved of his lousy excuse. It was okay to not bathe or wash your hair in winter at home, but it was not allowed here. After thinking about it, Ao Daisai said, "You won't look good in photos if you're unkempt." Yes, it was okay to go to work, but now that he was working at the company, he had to tidy up. That was dedication. Okay. Xiao Qishi actively came over to wash his hair and bath. He first raised his claws to test the water temperature and found that Ao Daisai did not lie to him. The water was warm. Then he could wash. Xiao Qishi bathed, and Ao Daisai helped by the side. He straightened out the feathers one by one, even more carefully than he did his own feathers. The onlooking zookeepers were not surprised at all because they had heard that the green peacock was raised by the white peacock himself. The white peacock doted on his only son very much. The zookeeper covered his mouth and laughed. After all, the two peacocks were not much different in size. The green peacock was so big that he still needed his father to help him bathe. After washing his hair, Xiao Qishi felt that his hair was wet. He thought to himself, "I really don't like washing my hair." The afternoon sun was very strong. After the two peacocks finished bathing, half of their feathers were wet. Ao Daisai raised his head and looked around. He saw the 9-zigzag bridge on the lake and called the little cutie, "Let's fly over there to dry our feathers." After saying that, he took off. The bustling tourists suddenly burst into cheers. Obviously, they were all captivated by the flying white peacock fairy. In the end, Ao Daisai landed on the railing of the bridge, his side face facing the tourists. His slightly drooping tail feathers were half open, but it was not open. He was just drying his feathers. Xiao Qishi spread his wings and also flew over. Unlike the blue peacock, they flew very smoothly, giving people the feeling that they were flying birds of prey. Then, the two peacocks stood side by side to dry their feathers. One moment, one would tidy the other's feathers, and the other would tickle the other. It was super intimate. The author has something to say. I wish Boss Egg and Ao Daisai a happy start W last time. Everyone said that the campus novel was not very good. Then I recommend A Good Friend's urban romance novel. Many of her old novels are good, and the new novel is very relaxed and funny. I Can't Act Anymore by Drunken Song Copy. Mumu transmigrated into a novel that combined elements of women's marriage fraud, a rich family's mistake, rebirth, and revenge. He transmigrated into the scumbag who cheated the marriage, the leopard cat who changed the crown prince, and the main character's revenge. And now, he was standing in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau with the victim's family, holding a freshly printed marriage certificate in his hand. Mumu looked up and saw the victim's family's gloomy expression. He pulled the corner of his mouth at him, revealing a sinister smirk that looked like he wanted to eat his flesh and blood. Mumu's legs went soft, his eyes turned black, and he trembled. Good brother, why don't we divorce? Urban situation comedy, inhumane stinky dog attack survival game idiot. Chapter 178. Males were obviously in a competitive relationship. How could these two male peacocks be so close? Between primates with high IQ, cleaning each other's feathers was a social behavior. The purpose was to strengthen one's position. Unlike mammals, peacocks do not establish social relationships with other peacocks. They can live in groups or alone if necessary. Facing the puzzled questions of the tourists, the staff carefully explained to them that there was a father and son standing on the railing of the bridge. The green peacock was raised by the white peacock, so their relationship was so good. However, the staff was also very confused. It was ridiculous that they would clean each other's feathers. The green peacock's eyes were like torches. Every time, it accurately found the feathers on the other's body that needed to be straightened. This was difficult to explain, so it was better not to explain. Anyway, it was fine as long as everyone was happy. In order to dry their feathers better, Xiao Qishi and Ao Daisai would constantly spread their wings. The sun could also kill bacteria. The closed feathers were soft and fluffy under the sun, so they would not get skin diseases. With the help of the wind, the effect was even faster. The dedicated Yolashanda said energetically, "Everyone seems to like watching us fly. I'll fly 2 more times." After all, they had eaten the food from a zoo. They had to work. They could not slack off. Ao Daisai, who lowered his head to clean the claw hooks, paused. He did not have as strong a desire to perform as the little bear. He felt that it was silly to fly around for no reason. Therefore, he continued to clean the sharp claw hooks and remove the layer of shell that was about to fall off to maintain the sensitivity of the claw hooks. The beautiful Yolashanda flew over the lake. As expected, it caused another round of cheers from the tourists. The group of blue peacocks was not to be outdone. They flew around the water after him. However, the green peacock was the most eye-catching. The one with the most luxurious feathers was still the green peacock. He received the most cheers. After flying back and forth twice, Xiao Qishi's workload was about the same as today's. On the last trip, he flew back to Ao Daisai's side. Ao Daisai looked at the sky where the humans were eagerly watching. He was also unable to take his eyes off them. Today's tickets were not bought in vain. Xiao Qishi returned with satisfaction. The lively scene made him feel very comfortable. There was a feeling of peace and prosperity. Ao Daisai rubbed against him, perhaps to agree with his point of view. Every wave of tourists did not stay here for too long. When the next wave of tourists came, Xiao Qishi would also fly twice. Occasionally, he would ask Otis to fly with him. Although Otis felt that it was silly, he would still cooperate with him. At noon, the sun in Bana became warm. It was indeed a place that was not cold even in winter. The anxious fans who had been waiting for them immediately burst into excited cheers. "Ah, they are out." A sweet girl's voice triggered all kinds of shouts. "Daddy Xianan, we are here to see you. And you're there." Xiao Qishi. He, who was originally walking with his head held high, suddenly stopped in his tracks. He almost tripped over his own feet and fell to the ground. "What do you mean by big?" Was it referring to him? The fans raised their cameras and kept taking pictures. All kinds of shouts did not stop. "Natural without filters. It's so beautiful. Dubai, you are so beautiful. Your son is so beautiful too." This time, he finally heard it clearly. Dubai was equivalent to Ao Daisai, right? But what was with the sun? Xiao Qishi fell into a daze. What was even more strange was that these people seemed to have known them for a long time and knew everything about their lives. As if knowing Yolashanda's doubts, Ao Daisai immediately gave an answer. "You forgot that humans used machines to take pictures of us. And it was very often." Xiao Qishi did not forget. He thought that the organization only tracked the data to protect and research them. He did not expect that these daily lives would be directly released to the public. That was not strange. The scene of Ao Daisai hatching him must have been seen, as well as all the scenes of Ao Daisai raising him from small ball bird until now. Then it was reasonable for humans to think that Ao Daisai was his father. But it was really not his father, not his father. "What's wrong with you?" The breeder had already started to put the food in. Yolashanda, who usually ran faster than anyone else, seemed to be absent-minded. Ao Daisai started to worry about him. "It's time to eat, little cutie. It's coming, it's coming." Xiao Qishi was indeed a little absent-minded. Although he knew that trying to correct the humans' view of their relationship was very childish, he just felt uncomfortable. "Ao Daisai, did you hear that?" Xiao Qishi reminded Ao Daisai and wanted to hear his opinion. "They actually said that we are father and son. Don't you think it's strange?" Ao Daisai did not pay attention to what the humans were saying, but he could hear the distress in the little bear's voice. He then asked puzzledly, "Why do you think it's strange?" "Because our correct relationship is that of partners. It's too strange to be mistaken as father and son," Xiao Qishi said. Ao Daisai fell into a short silence. He seemed to be puzzled and asked, "What do they think? Will it affect our relationship?" Xiao Qishi choked. "Of course not." It seemed that the conversation should end here, but Ao Daisai was very concerned about Yolashanda's mood. He hoped that the other party would be happy. If you still care about it, it's not like there's no way. Ao Daisai suddenly leaned over and rubbed Yulashanda's neck. What way? Yulashanda pricked up his ears to listen. Let's go eat first. Ao Daisai mischievously kept him in suspense. The author has something to say. Our partnership can't be hidden anymore. If father and son work together, this area won't be enough to kill. So that's. The pure tourists were stunned. Only now did they realize that they had caught up with the internet celebrity Peacock Live. It was quite interesting. Fortunately, they had bought their tickets a few days in advance. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to see such a grand occasion. To make, Xiao Qixi had finished eating. After washing his mouth and face, it was time to start work. He had already forgotten about the gloomy matter that had been caused by someone else's misunderstanding. Ao Daisai did not forget. He still remembered his promise. The sun at 9 o'clock in the morning was warm and soft. It was very comfortable. Ao Daisai, who was satisfied with a delicious meal, squinted his eyes lazily and strolled on the grass. Just by walking around like this, he was able to attract a lot of people's attention. Coupled with his elegant posture, he was soon greeted with a chorus of shouts. White Shinji, spread your tail. According to everyone's understanding of peacocks, this stroll was the prelude to spreading its tail. They temporarily ignored the green peacock that was cleaning by the sink and focused their attention on the white peacock, waiting with anticipation. Ao Daisai dragged his gorgeous white tail and slowly walked around. He attracted everyone's attention. During this time, he did not stop for any female peacocks. It was obvious that he did not like those female peacocks. People made good-natured jokes, but did not accuse him of having high standards. Because he was very good-looking, and he was so outstanding, it was reasonable for him to have high standards for his partner. The problem was if he did not find the female peacock after walking around, they would not be able to see the white peacock spread its tail. They had been following it online and offline for 2 years, but they had not seen it even once. It was a pity. What everyone was worried about happened. The handsome man did not find his partner. He finally walked back to the green peacock. Everyone showed a disappointed expression. Then, at this time, the white peacock suddenly shook his tail and lazily opened the beautiful peacock tail that everyone had been waiting for. The sun shone through the feathers, plating each feather with a glow. Paired with the white peacock's proud and reserved posture, people's fingers were about to freeze from pressing the shutter. Everything in front of them was beautiful, but no one dared to make a noise. Obviously, they were afraid that the noise would alarm the other party. It would be bad if he took back the peacock tail. Ao Daisai would not take back the peacock tail. He showed it very generously, but not for the tourists to see. He was more concerned about his partner's reaction. Chapter 180. The pure tourist who had just been told that they were father and son became even more confused. He couldn't help but turn his head to look at the stranger who had explained to him, his eyes full of suspicion. He saw that the stranger gave him a very awkward smile, probably because the stranger couldn't explain the scene in front of him. The embarrassed fan thought to himself, I'm definitely not lying. The green peacock was indeed raised by the white peacock. I saw it with my own eyes. I can't be wrong. As for why it had turned into such a gayish situation, it was unknown. In short, some sensitive tourists had already seen that the relationship between the two male peacocks was unusual. It was definitely not as simple as raising father and son. They were happy to accept the new relationship between the two peacocks. Not only that, but they also actively ran to the account of the reserve center to report the new situation. Perhaps they hoped that the professor there could explain why the white peacock liked the green peacock he raised. Would this affect their breeding work? And so on. There were also some more insensitive audience members who didn't think there was anything wrong with the white peacock and the green peacock showing a little intimacy. After all, They had been so clingy since they were young. In a single-parent family, there was only one child. The father's personality was gentle, so it was natural for him to be clingy to his only son. People who thought this way obviously ignored the instincts of animals and treated them as humans. Today was Saturday. The professors and staff of the reserve hadn't left yet. They were full of expectations for tomorrow's trip to Bana, but they didn't expect a new problem to hit them again. It was a video posted by a tourist. It was originally a very beautiful video because the white peacock and the green peacock both unfolded their peacocks. The key point was that they didn't unfold their peacocks for the female peacock, but for each other. The professors, who knew animal science very well, suddenly felt a headache, because there was no doubt about it at all, and there was no need to investigate. They had met two peacocks who liked the same sex. What kind of luck was this? This kind of example was not uncommon in the animal kingdom. Most species had same-sex behavior. As intellectuals, they had no prejudice. The key point was that the green peacock was very precious. It was not easy to find a male green peacock that was excellent in all aspects. People were full of desire for its offspring. They couldn't wait to let the green peacock breed a few nests of eggs as soon as it reached adulthood. The two professors looked at each other and smiled bitterly. We can only go and see tomorrow. The distance between the two cities wasn't too far. If they set off in the morning, they would arrive in about an hour.